for like an hour or so. I was under the impression that it wasn't going to take me that long to kind of get things set up, and boy, did I miscalculated that bigly, and I do apologize, folks. Just give me one quick moment here. I'm going to let you guys trickle on in here, too. I just need to complete this little tweet here. Boop, boop. And I hope you all are doing fantastic this week. Or this last week. We got Labor Day coming up, so hopefully those of you who are able to get a day off, awesome. If not, I really understand that sucks. Got quite a bit to cover today. Doing a double down, if you haven't already realized this, but I'm going to be doubling down on, oh, give me a second here. I'm just trying to get my systems here. I apologize. But doubling down on two Gundam series instead of just the normal one every week. I just want to quickly and briefly explain that. So last week, obviously, I didn't do a live stream review or a live stream in general, other than I think gaming a little bit. And I did a double down of 2 weeks ago, which was Seed and Seed Destiny. I am actually coming across another situation where I had to do another work on the weekend situation, but this time it's not with my wife, who I helped last week. This week it's my own job that I have to do something for the weekend. So I'm not going to be able to do another live stream review. And even though I didn't do a live stream review last week and I doubled down 2 weeks ago, I still kept watching Gundam. Just because I'm not doing a live stream review doesn't mean I'm going to stop doing what I'm doing. I need to keep going, and we're almost done with the Gundam franchise, folks. So I just kept trudging along. So last week I did complete watching Gundam 00, and last night I just finished watching Gundam AGE. When I say finish, I mean I watched all of the movies too and all that fun stuff. So yeah, I'm a little bit tired, a little bit cattywampus on my timing, and I'm just like, eh. Also, I don't know if you notice, a little bit of the production value has been upped up a little bit, just by a smidgen. As you can tell, if you can't tell from my previous videos, you guys are much closer now. I actually got myself a little boom arm for the camera, and I got me some additional lighting too. Hopefully this will be a little bit easier for you guys to see a little more of a clear image. Helps out with the cam that I have, and I'm able to bring my mic a little bit closer so you guys can get a little bit more of a tonality from me. That being said, though, I am doing another doubling down. We're going to be doing 00, and we are going to be doing AGE. I am also going to be covering the movies for 00 and the movies for AGE as well. And we're getting close to the end, folks. As far as I can understand here, we are getting down to the line of I have Iron Blood Orphan, which I just started today, basically. Technically, because I watched like 2 episodes after I finished up AGE, and then I realized, oh wait, it's late, and I needed to start writing my review. I was trying to get ahead of myself. But I'm really, really close to being done. We have Iron Blooded Orphan. We have the Build Fighter series, and that's pretty much it. Build Fighter series, we got Build Fighters Try, Divers, and then Divers Re-Rise. And then, if I'm going with anticipation of how I'm doing everything so far, we'll probably be able to include Battleug. That is going to be coming out in October through Gundam Info. That's like Gundam Information. I'm like, wait a second, they're called Gundam Info. So that's something I'm looking forward to, a little bit excited about as well. Let me see, and I forgot to grab this thing because I'm not gonna be able to see people when they are messaging me and going like, "Hey, I was gonna say Zagu, hey, Briston, like, what's up or whatnot," or like they're trying to ask me some stuff. So I'm not gonna be able to pay attention, and I don't want to do that. I want you guys to be able to, you know, message me and we can chat while I'm live streaming because that's the whole point of me doing this. There we go. Now I got that all set up. We're almost at the 5-minute mark here, so just as always, I will be doing these live streams, these reviews, at least in portion, kind of like opening and the closing for both 00 and AGE, just because I'm going to be putting these on YouTube, so I do definitely want them to be a little bit more like YouTube friendly, of course, and of course some reminders for some of our newbies. But if you're watching right now, just make sure not to jump out or whatnot, because I'm not ending the stream or anything like that. It's just because I want to get it, nice and neat for YouTube and have a little of those little stingers for people and all that jazz like that. That normal stuff that you see from a lot of YouTube videos. And let me just check one more thing. So while I'm just waiting for the trickle down or two, I am almost done with my Digimon stuff, which is really, really funny. I can't wait till the new brace, the brace comes out, or the vital bracelet, I guess is what it's called. I'm gonna be getting the newer version. I will be doing like a review on that one, and I'll do some live streaming stuff too for that. I'm really excited for that. But I'm like going through the egg trees on the second 20th anniversary, and man, I got me. So I'm working on I forgot what tree it was. I think it's like the third and fourth eggs trees, and I just got Edamon. I'm trying to get him to King Edamon, and I love Edamon as a villain. He's one of those, and maybe I'll talk about this in the future too, but like one of those dangerous villains. Like he's one of those stupid villains who seem stupid, but they're actually genuinely dangerous. It's like Kefka from Final Fantasy VI, or I can't think of any other villain on top of my head at the moment, but Kefka is the first thing that comes to my mind. But nothing to do really with the anime, but with the game itself, or the little toy. I'm not sure what I want to call it. I guess toy. He does like little dancing emotes, and because he's like Elvis and stuff like that in the anime, or at least from the dubbing I remember, and does like little dances, and I'm like, oh my god, this is so cool. He does like dancing emotes and stuff like that, and like no other Digimon, like they kind of have a little like raw emotes, but Edamon one doesn't only just do that, he freaking air pumps, and then he also dances. I was like, once I'm done clearing out the trees, because I love evolving stuff. It's like Pokemon, right? I like collecting and building up my Pokedex. Same thing I'm enjoying with these Digimon games or toys is that it's building up my library and collecting them and digivolving them. I really enjoy that. So, but I also want to like have them around just like for fun. And I'm like, next time I'm not clearing out a tree or whatnot, and I can have the Digimon I want to have out there, right? I might just make Edamon and keep him that way, because his emotes are hilariously great. Hilariously great. I love it. And I'm like, oh my god, this is so cool. I want my Edamon to walk around my screen just like air pumping and just like doing like these little dance. I think he's just funny. And it just makes me think back to the anime itself. I haven't seen Digimon since I was a kid, so I'm having nostalgic fond memories of that at least. Anywho. Alright. I rambled on long enough, and I'm gonna try and get this one done shorter, folks. I do apologize. I want to really get this done shorter because I actually have other things to do today too, and I should have got this started up 2 hours ago. That's okay. You know me. I like to ramble, and I hope you guys like to listen to me ramble too. Ooh, excuse me. And as always too, if you come across a little portion here. Oh, I had to get to my right here. If you see this, I'm going to give you guys a few moments of a few moments to be aware of spoilers. Keep an eye out for that banner right there, because I'm going to leave that banner up as I continue to talk about what I want to talk about. And I will remove this to let you guys know that it is now safe to return. That being said too, I'll try and let you guys know I'm trying to structure these remaining reviews that I have left, or remaining live stream reviews that I have left, be a little bit more concise for you all, so that way you know when to come in and come out, so you don't have to be worried about spoilers or anything like that. Anywho, with that said and done, and I can wait that stupid, guess that was a Subaru. I don't know, souped up Subaru. I don't know. Anyways. Hey there, and welcome to another Nerdy Reviews. I'm the Absolute Nerd, but you can just call me Briston. Oh my god, I stumbled right there. I promise, guys, I'm not going to try and do what I did like in last several other live streams ago, where I try to like redo everything. I'm trying to keep everything just live and ongoing, so doing my best. Oh wait, did I make sure that the tweet get done? Yes. 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 Okay. Enough futzing around on my end. Let's get this show on the road. Hey there, and welcome to another Nerdy Reviews. I'm the Absolute Nerd, but you can also call me Briston. And today, we're going to be reviewing Mobile Suit Gundam 00. Also, I'll be reviewing in the same review too, the special edition movies alongside with Awakening of the Trailblazer. Now, before I begin with anything regarding this entire review, if you're watching this on Twitch, make sure to follow me on my Twitch account. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to like the video, subscribe to my channel, leave a comment down below. I want to hear from you guys. What did you think about this series? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? What did you thought about my opinions? I want to hear from you guys. Chime down below. That said, let's go ahead and jump into the review here. Like always, let's go ahead and just start off with the story for Gundam 00. This one's a very unique story since it does take place in our year. I mean, when I heard about this series, and let me just rant a little bit here. When I heard about this series, I heard that it's gonna be in the Domino calendar, which is our calendar, our AD calendar. I was like, oh, really? We're finally gonna have a Gundam series set in our timeline? When do we get Gundams? 2307. So you're telling me there's a chance that there's gonna be Gundams? I really want to give that gif of Jim Carrey going like, so you're telling me there's a chance? I know. Long shot, and unless I end up like Aeolia Shinberg or something like that. Spoilers. I'm not really going to be able to see Gundams. But I think it was really, really cool that they put this in our timeline. Speaking of all of that, again, let me just tell you the story here. So again, this takes place in the year 2307. An organization by the name of Celestial Being declares to end all war and conflict between nations by using their 4 Gundams to sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me just refresh all of that, okay? I apologize. So let me go ahead and start off with the story here. The story takes place in the year 2307 of the Amino Domino calendar. The organization known as Celestial Being declares to end all war and conflicts between nations by using their 4 Gundams in armed interventions throughout the world. That's the base level of the story, and it does evolve furthermore, especially since it's now divvied up between 2 seasons. I'll talk about that more too. First and foremost, I really want to talk about, before I get into like fun little trivia or anything like that, is that talking about what this Gundam series takes place in. It's in our actual calendar. It's in our year, or AD, basically. It's funny, when I first heard about this series many years ago, like, oh, we're gonna get a Gundam series that takes place in our time, and in our like timeline, our AD calendar, right? And I was like, oh, sweet, awesome. So when do they predict that we're gonna have Gundams or mobile suits? And I'm like, it's gonna be anytime soon? It's gonna be now? It's gonna be now? And then they go, it's 2307. So you're telling me there's a chance? Yeah, I'm sorry. I just had to say it that way because it was a really cool idea that they're going to bring Gundams into our timeline. Of course, I don't think it's going to happen, obviously, but I think it's just kind of a fun thought and a fun idea to really bring into our world and trying to bring a little bit more realism to that. But when I talk about realism, it's kind of hard with Gundam in general. I mean, you already have the imagine about giant robots, but I think some of the things that they portray here in Gundam 00 might make that kind of a far shot. Anyways, let me give you guys some fun little trivia factors here too. So this is the first Gundam series to actually be animated in widescreen and in HD. Now, there are other Gundam series after this, fact of the matter, that are done in HD, or like with our previous reviews with Seed and Seed Destiny, where they got HD remasters as well. But this is the very first Gundam series that started off in HD and in the widescreen format. The animation for this series is fantastic. It is top-notch, very crisp, very clear. I love a lot of the contrasty lines alongside with the animation and coloring itself. There is usage of CGI in here too, mostly with the ships and then some of the weapon effects, mostly with the GN particles. but it doesn't take away, it doesn't make you feel like, oh, I'm watching like a 3D thing in a 2D world. No, you don't really get any of that. It feels all aligned with each other. It does give a little bit more emphasis on some other types of like dimensionalization, you know, between like the 3D and the 2D, but it's nothing super distracting. Like I would always refer to as Gundam Origin. Now, aside from the animation, the music in this series is superb. Great music in this series. I think the only time I didn't really care for the music is the openings and endings. Much of them are, they're okay songs. I didn't really care for them. But the series actual music, so the music that are used for the action sequences, the music that's used for dialogues, and of course just for the overall story, fantastic, really well used, gives a lot of that atmosphere and tone to this entire series. Very enjoyable, very enthralling, and very involving. Now, the dubbing in the series is one of, if not one of the best dubbings for the Gundam franchise. I think a lot of the voice actors and actresses fits their characters so very, very well. Great casting. Surprisingly enough, too, that several of the, like, not several, but some of these voice actors came from Seed and Seed Destiny. When I had complained about some of their voice acting before, this is a great example where they find the characters and they put them with, or they find the voice actors and actresses that have a good voice still. They're fantastic. They're fantastic actors and actresses. They have great voices, and then instead of putting into characters where they just don't fit that well, they put them into characters that fit very well with them. So this is a really good example of that. But yeah, really enjoyed a lot of the voice acting in English. I also can say the same thing for the Japanese voice actors and actresses too. Albeit though Japanese is a little bit odd. Now I can only speak about the Japanese because I watched the SE movies or special edition movies, which are only in Japanese and subtitled in English. So a lot of the Japanese voice actors and actresses are obviously there because it's a compilation movie. So I get to hear everybody, again, from the entire series in the movie formats. The only issue I have is that some of the characters just doesn't sound that great. One I can think of off the top of my head is Lock-On Stratus. Lock-On Stratus sounds, his voice actor in English is fantastic. Fits him very well, and it fits so in tone with his character and his mannerisms. In the Japanese version, though, or the Japanese dubbing, or yeah, dubbing, I guess, it doesn't fit him that well. It doesn't sound that great as Lock-On Stratus, and I just had an overall issue with like a lot of this tones that Lock-On would have, or like this emphasis about his character, or like his past history and stuff like that. And I just feel like the Japanese actor doesn't really portray or capture a lot of his emotions, unlike his American counterpart. So that or English counterpart. I can't say American because I believe they're Canadian voice actors, if I'm not mistaken. So their English counterparts. But other than that, I mean, like there's only some voice actors and actresses I didn't care for in the Japanese dubbing versus the English dubbing. But overall, I think both of them did fantastic overall. Now, some other fun things here too. This is the first Gundam series that does take a seasonal approach. If you are familiar with anime, you're going to know what the seasonal approach is. They break up the series. It could be like a 26 episode series or a 50 episode series, depending on how you really look at it, into 2 seasons or multiple seasons. So this is the first Gundam series to actually do this. Originally, Gundam series like this, because Gundam 00 is a 50 episode series, but they broke it up into 2 different parts. So at this point here, we have the first season at 25 episodes, and then you have the second season, which is the next 25 episodes. I really don't like that necessarily. I'm not a huge fan of this seasonal break stuff, and I just prefer to watch my series as an ongoing kind of a thing. I guess they really just want to do it to fit in with the way that Japanese anime is put on television and broadcasted, so I guess that makes sense, but I didn't really care for it. The only thing I really could say about the whole seasonal break is that I did like how it's a differentiation between the first and second seasons, because they utilize a lot of these time skips. This is another series in the Gundam franchise that utilizes time skips. I think that it's very fascinating and interesting, because usually when it comes to a time skip in the Gundam franchise, usually it's done in a sequel series or a sequel movie, but not within the series itself. Sometimes we might get a small time skip that's very, very negligently mentioned. Like, oh, it's been a month later, or like some time has passed, like 8th MS team mentioning about like, you know, it's been a month or so since this incident. Very subtle, very light. Gundam 00 does not hide the fact of the matter that it utilizes time skips. The most notable one here, and not really of a big spoiler or not, is between seasons 1 and 2. There is a big gap between seasons 1 and 2, but there's also time skips in between the time frames from, like, you know, in season 1 and then in season 2 as well. So they do utilize a lot of these time skip moments. Other than the time skipping portions too, I really enjoyed a lot of the pacing and the story overall. The series does a fantastic job of balancing out between the story, our characters, and the action. We get a lot of equalization in the run times of the episodes, and although there's some issues I have with it, and I'll talk a little bit more too, but for the most part, everything is found in a right balance. I think the only time I would say that there isn't an equal balance, so most of it in season 1, great job, because we find a lot of time between talking about what's going on in the story, getting to know our characters and building our characters, and of course the incredible action that we see in every single episode. That kind of changes a little bit when we get to second season. Second season then stops talking more about stops talking about the story, really, and it becomes more driven by the action. We still get character development stuff and time with our characters, but most of the story kind of gets, like, backlogged, and what we get is a lot of character development alongside with action, and that's what strings second season along. And especially towards the very end of second season just felt very rushed at the end. At the very end. I'd say, like, the last 3 to 4 episodes felt kind of rushed. Now, when I talk about the story too with Gundam 00, much of it is a very politicized story, dealing with our different nations alongside with celestial being. We deal with the political beliefs alongside with the moral beliefs of our characters as well. Many fans and many people who have watched the series, and I attest to this too, would say that this is very much similar to Gundam Wing. However, this is where my opinion deviates from other opinions I've seen online or heard from others too, where they say that this is a much more polished version of Wing, where it's not really confusing or convoluted, and it's much more straightforward with the politics and everything. I happen to disagree with that one there. I think that Wing's politics and the way that they told it in that story makes more sense. You could check out my review on Gundam Wing itself too, but just to really capsize on that one, the convolutedness, well, it's only at the very beginning, and much of the confusion is to fit within the story itself and address what becomes a very critical issue when you deal with the talks about pacifism and war. Gundam Wing utilizes the confusion to really hone in on between this hypocrisy of, like, hey, we want to fight for peace, but we're going to use the same tools to fight for that peace, and how they justify that. Wing does a great job, a fantastic job of explaining this. Gundam 00, though, has a little bit of an issue with that one. Particularly, we see this much more in the second season, kind of like what I was mentioning earlier on. I feel like 00, kind of like when they come across that situation of, like, well, Celestial Being is using armed interventions to stop war, but they're causing war themselves, they're causing conflict themselves. So what do you do about that? And the series kind of not really addresses it, and they kind of just sweep it under the rug, kind of a thing. And that's where I say, like, the story kind of, like, slows down or hinders itself in second season. Kind of comes up to that issue, and it doesn't really revolve around a story so much because of this trying to explain or get over the hypocritical fact of the matter. Whereas Gundam Wing tackles that right on, I feel that Gundam 00 does not tackle this on, and it causes some issues within second season. Slows it down a little bit, but pretty much what causes you to get out of that little slump is literally the action. The action is going to pull you out of this little political fiasco, this political conundrum, and drive it through with the action. Another thing I really want to talk about too, about Gundam 00, and I think this is really fascinating. Now, this is where I say it's fascinating because we get this throughout the entire Gundam franchise in this religious aspects. Throughout the entire Gundam franchise, we see moments of like they mentioning about like like religious aspects between like God or biblical references. I really want to dive into this subject when I do like a Gundam theory thing or whatnot, because like for an example, Gundam Seed has references of Joshua and some other biblical kind of things like the Archangel itself and the Archangel and so forth. You got other things that kind of show up throughout the entire Gundam franchise itself as well, but usually those are very subtle undertones, very not out forward about that one, and you kind of really have to dig or know the information behind them. Sorry, I'm about to sneeze. Ooh, ooh, ooh. God bless me. Sorry. Yeah, look at that. It's a reference of religion, right? I'm not a super religious person. I am religious, but just giving you guys some fun facts there. I'm sorry if I'm being gross for you guys. I do apologize. I realize the mic is much closer now. Might hurt you guys' ears. Anyhow, but we get a lot more of these subtle texts of religious tones or aspects in the Gundam series or Gundam franchise. Gundam 00, though, however, is very overt with the religious tones. In fact, it plays very pivotal and key for some of our characters, such as Setsuna. But a lot of the religious tones in Gundam 00 can be very overt with characters like Setsuna, as I mentioned, or it can be very subtle things. Some things, and I'll just throw it out there just so when you get a chance to watch and look around, maybe it'll be fun for you to explore and learn, such as Veda, Ribbon's allegory to Satan, Paradise Falls, even Celestial Being themselves. I think these are like some like fun little things I just want to throw at you guys. I'm going to talk a little bit more in the spoilers section, but it's really fascinating how they really want to tackle this on, and they add this into the series, and they really emphasize a lot of it too. Something we have not seen in the Gundam franchise thus far. Now, I've already talked about this part a little bit too, giving a hint, but the action in this series is simply amazing, top notch. Every single episode is very action packed. It brings a lot of this fun dynamics to the fights too. Again, this is where we say it's very similar to Wing, because a lot of the fighting, it depends and it's ever changing with the tides of power switching between the sides. So it's very exciting to watch. It's not as one-sided at first. Well, starts off very one-sided, and it quickly changes from that point. So I think that's a really fun thing about Gundam 00. And it's ever consistent throughout the seasons. Between seasons 1 and 2, I don't think any of the action sequences ever really disappointed me. There are some that I wish that had lasted a little bit longer, or we got more out of the fights between certain characters because of like the development of the stories and like coming to a crescendo of their like conflicting arcs and stuff like that. But I find that a lot of the action is really fun. It's something that you would not miss out on Gundam 00. Definitely a driving point here. With that said, on Gundam 00, there isn't a whole lot that I want to talk beyond that one there. So, without spoiling a lot, because I do have some portions in Gundam 00 I really want to talk about, but it is going to spoil it for you folks. So, I'm going to give you guys a spoiler alert warning right now. Go ahead and skip forward. I'm going to let you know right now. The next time I will be stopping off, you can just skip past the favorite suits. And when I get to the new Gundam segment, or you're new to the Gundam segment. How do I put that again? I'm new to the Gundam franchise. Should I watch this first? Yeah, that segment right there. Go ahead and skip there. Just make sure to keep an eye out for the smaller banner to disappear. That being said, let's go ahead and talk about the spoiler parts. I want to talk about Gundam 00. There's a lot of cool things I really did enjoy about Gundam 00 I really want to talk about, and don't feel right spoiling it for those who just don't want to get spoilers, right? So the first thing I want to talk about is the world politics, the stage that Gundam 00 sets up. I find it very interesting and fascinating how they utilize at the time world politics and then try to revolve it around of how it's structured around, what's going on in universe. So in this case here, because of the orbital elevators being developed, we have like partnerships between nations creating their own like segregation of each other. Each one has their own faction. So we have 3 separate factions or 3 nations at this point because of these orbital elevators. We have basically, it's like America versus Europe versus China, Russia. And I thought it was kind of interesting how everyone kind of got grouped up or segregated in that way. And what it creates is 3 different world perspectives. And what we get is like, we get the United States perspective. We're trying to do our own little thing, kind of like grubby and capitalistic in some manner and form too. You get the European front, which is most of what we see in the European front area is mostly of the Middle Eastern, like Kazakhstan and stuff like that with Marina. And am I saying Kazakhstan? I think I'm saying it correctly here. And a little bit of Krugis before its absolute demise. But we see a lot of the past history between Krugis and Kazakhstan. And I can't remember if it was Kazakhstan. I apologize for this, but I just think it's fascinating that instead of really focusing on like kind of like the British perspective or anything like that, or like the upper European areas, we're focusing more like the Middle East areas basically, and that's where a lot of the conflict or warring that we see, this undeveloped portions or warring portions happen. And then we also get the China-Russia aspect, so we get this I want to say like communistic aspects. Well, you get the communistic aspects, but it's very much like a power struggle between, Russia, China, and the United States. And then you kind of have this in between where all the conflict takes place. So I think it's just kind of fun and fascinating to see like you have your 2 sides and then you have the middle conflict. And that's where a lot of the fighting takes place too. So I thought, yeah, it was just interesting how they utilize the world politics and frame it in such a way. Alongside with that framing of the world politics, the whole utilization of child soldiers is very unique to Gundam 00. Not saying that child soldiers is absolutely unique to Gundam 00, because we have seen child soldiers in the Gundam franchise. Depending on how you want to phrase a child soldier, I think of a child soldier as a child who was literally raised up to fight as a soldier. So, I mean, some people would see like child soldiers such as like Amuro or the crew of the White Base or anybody after that factor, because most of them are teenagers or kids that are being involved in war. I don't consider that necessarily as child soldiers, but they are children in war or children that become soldiers. But when I think of child soldiers, I'm trying to think back as hard as I can, and I haven't further research into this, but the closest I can think so far right now in the Gundam franchise that I can remember up to this point, closest one is Hiroyui from Gundam Wing. He is a legitimate child soldier. He fought in wars as a child and was used as a soldier. So we have seen Gundam soldiers or child soldiers in the Gundam franchise, but 00 takes us to a higher point. They utilize child soldiers to really emphasize a lot with the world politics and a lot alongside with the politics or the hatred or the terror or horrors of war. Again, emphasizing on the core aspects of the Gundam franchise. They do so, or at least in this case, Gundam 00 does this through the 4 main characters. They are all children or child soldiers in and of themselves. I'll explain and I'll briefly break it down too. Tyria is the most loosest form of a child soldier because he is an Innovate that was created to create conflict. Yes, we do know that Tyria is working with Celestial Being to stop conflict, but in his efforts to stop conflict, he is creating conflict. He is a child soldier after all, in some sense. Alleluia or Hallelujah, however you want to put those two together, is quite literally a child soldier genetically engineered. He is a super soldier built in this way and form. And he tells his side of the story alongside with a bunch of other, or representing many other super soldier children. Very very much so, again, like I want to talk back to previous Gundam series, it's almost harkening back to like cyber new types with children like Peru, or with other cyber new types like I want to say anybody from ZZ, but they're not really children. Most of them are adults, so can't really count them. But my point being though is that seeing cyber new types being utilized, I could think back to 4, but 4 was more of a teenager. I can't really count as a child soldier, maybe. I don't know. I think child soldier, I'm thinking like very, very young. Prue is the first one that comes to my mind, and she was genetically engineered to be a cyber new type. Dare I say cloned as well. That's a fact of the matter. Same thing with Prue 2. I'm gonna throw that out there. But same here with Alleluia. Alleluia is a child soldier engineered to be the perfect soldier. Lock-on Stratus is another example of another child soldier, but he's a different perspective. He is a child affected by the conflicts started by many different factions, or in this case, I can't remember the faction, the Irish faction versus Middle Eastern factions, such as the one that Setsuna was involved in. But he is a child soldier because of these conflicts that impacted his life directly, his family directly, and causing him to inadvertently grow up and be involved in these situations. So he became a child soldier growing up into it, wanting to fight against these horrors, or fighting against those that had harmed him. And of course, Setsuna is the most base level of child soldiers. He's the literal child soldier. He's not like Hallelujah, where he was genetically modified. In fact, he is just like any actual child soldier that we might see today, in today's era, which do happen. Children that are brainwashed to believe in either a different belief perspective or a religious perspective to fight for a cause in a conflict or a war. It's absolutely horrible, absolutely terrifying, and absolutely despicable, because we see what it has done to Setsuna himself, and it's creating a lot of this long-lasting regret for this character. So I thought it was kind of fascinating that they kind of dived into these characters, and you can see in these kind of perspective of the child soldier. And throughout the series, we see how them develop as characters and talk more about what had led them to here, and furthermore from that point. Another fun one I want to talk about too, and we don't see these kind of characters pop up previously. They're more frequent as of like the more 90s-esque Gundam series going forward into the 2000s. And it's a character trope that we kind of see from time to time. Excuse me, sorry. It's a character trope that we see from time to time, and it is the warmonger, right? Now, when I talk about Gundam 00, for those who've watched this, you know exactly who I'm talking about. I'm talking about Alial Sanchez. He is a absolute brute and savage of a character, very direct in wanting to cause conflict for the sake of causing conflict. I bring up the warmonger trope because it's very unique with the Gundam franchise. Most of the time with this warmonger, though, we've seen it in a few of the Gundam series, but not really fully flushed out, and they had their purposes within the context of like thematic things. Alial Sanchez doesn't fit this though. So trying to dial back down here, other characters I refer back to, number one I would refer to is Dorothy Catalonia from Gundam Wing. But she is not this direct brute. She's very indirect about causing war and conflict. She's a character that's enamored with war, enamored with fighting, enamored with people dying for their causes and their beliefs, because it generates a new, how do I put this, a new way of thinking, a new way of going about things, and presenting in what war can actually build. She's on the spectrum that war is not bad. It's that perspective of destruction creates, not absolute destruction is destruction. So that's where Dorothy comes from, and she brings that perspective into Gundam Wing. However, there is flaws with her character, both as a writing perspective and flaws with her within the universe itself, because her own morality about how she perceives war. And that's addressed in Gundam Wing. I'm not going to dive too much into that one, though. But what's important about her is that she is a warmonger, though. She's the one that incites conflict and desires more conflict. Another character we see later on in the Gundam franchise is Gingingham from Turn A. But he's, again, very similar to Alial Sanchez, but from a different perspective. He's the being from a samurai-esque family that longs to have conflict because that's what they were meant to be. That's what soldiers are meant for, is for war, for conflict. What do soldiers do when there is no conflict? What makes a soldier if there is no war? Those sort of things. Ginginiham brings that to Turn A and brings a lot of that perspective with him. He's a very direct and a confrontational character himself, and he desires and wants to bring fighting to what's going on in the universe of Turn A. But he is not so much so as a absolute destroyer. It's just that how he was brought up, how he was raised, and how he was as a character. Not so much so as like, I want to fight for the sake of like, I want to kill and stuff like that. This is where I mosey on down to Alial Sanchez. He's a different perspective of the Warbringer trope so far in the Gundam franchise. He's a character that absolutely is enthralled, enamored, and desires and craves war. He fights for the sake of fighting and causing harm and pain towards others. He's a unique kind of a character and mostly a plot device himself. He's just used to push a lot of things going forward. He's the one that causes a lot of conflicts and a lot of deaths throughout the entire series itself too. Again, when I talk about him, he's very different from Dorothy and Gingham because both of those characters have something to represent. But Alial doesn't have anything to represent. If anything else, that his kind of trope that brings into the franchise is the absolute, that pure darkness of wanting conflict for the sake of conflict, the deeper innate human desire for fighting and conflict, and really relishing in that. I think that that's something very unique to the Gundam franchise. We haven't seen this in any other character thus far, and I think Alial Sanchez really brings it to the most finest boil. He's like the diamond of this trope here. So I'm not that I like this character, but I just find him very, very fascinating and very different than what I've seen so far throughout what we've gone through in the entire Gundam franchise at this point. So I think it was just really worth noting and talking about him as he introduces something brand new, a brand new trope to the Gundam franchise. Another thing I want to talk about spoiler-wise is Saji. Now, I want to talk particularly, this is all Season 1 stuff I'm talking about here. A little bit, the Alial is both Season 1 and 2. But Saji, I want to tell you guys a fun story here. So, I had watched Gundam 00 way back in 2009, 2010, when, so I was lucky enough, so here's what we have here. I watched these on the Blu-ray here from Right Stuff. I do actually have the Anime Legends on DVD when it was released many years ago. Now, with the Anime Legends one, I watched it with a friend of mine, and she and I plowed through some Gundam series together, and we were having some fun and laughs and enjoying Gundam as it is. But nothing was much more fun than when we were watching Gundam 00, and all I have to say that we both were terrible people. When we were watching Gundam 00, because, you know, you were introduced to so many characters. We have a huge cast in Gundam 00. But one particular cast member was the most awkward of them all, and that's Saji Crossroads. Saji is a civilian, and we follow him and Louise Havitley throughout their life and how they are kind of involved in this world. They provide us that civilian perspective. So we got from political aspects, from political leaders or other characters such as like Sergei and stuff like that. We got the Gundamizers and the crew of the Ptoleminos to show us like perspectives from the war front itself. And now we got characters from the civilian side. And with that, we got, of course, Saji. When I say that my friend and I are terrible people, we were literally watching Gundam 00 and I'm like, why is Saji, like, of course, I've never seen Gundam 00 at that point, so I'm like, why is Saji here? What is his point? Is he just trying to show us, like, the civilian perspective, the negligence of people about the world around him and stuff like that? Which, that's what his character was. And my friend and I were just being very, very terrible people, and we were just really calling out, like, all the terrible things that were going to happen to Saji. I'm like, oh, okay, so let me guess. We're going to bring in Saji here. Oh, it's like he's going to have this nice, cute girl with him and stuff like that, and he's going to try and go about his life, and then things are going to go bad. Like, later on we are introduced to Luis's mother, and I'm like, why are we having so much time with her mother? You know what? They're gonna kill her. They're gonna kill they're gonna kill Luis's mother, and then it's just gonna rub Luis and Saji a whole horrible way. Lo and behold, I believe it was like episode 13 or so. I can't remember. I have to look back to it. But Luis's mother dies, and that happens. And we were kind of laughing about it, and we were like, "Oh my god, we called that!" And going from that point on, we were calling so many things that were going to happen to Saji and Luis from that point onwards. Like, oh, okay, so that I think it was actually before that too. It was like, oh yeah, his sister's like in the news reporter. Oh man, I've heard about horrible stories about news reporters who dig too deep into a story that they shouldn't be digging in are going to die. Guess what we called? And we were laughing at the same time. I was like, we're terrible people. I can't believe that we called it. But that's the thing about with Saji and his story with Luis, is that his is very cliched. It's super callable. I would almost say if like anybody who watches, I would almost challenge you, like, did you kind of call it out like we did? We practically called every single thing bad that could happen to Saji and Luis. We called it. And by second season, we even joked about this. We joked about this so hard, and I couldn't believe it. I'm like, you know what's gonna absolutely happen? I bet you, like we were like joking about this, like almost like we were saying. I can't remember who said this though, but it was like one of us said that Saji is gonna somehow end up with Celestial Being. Like, that's ever gonna happen. Right, but he's gonna end up with Celestial Being. He's gonna fight with them and stuff like that, and he's gonna be the whiny little nagging person about pacifism and stuff like that. He's gonna be like Marina 2.0. And then Luis, she's gonna come back because she couldn't put the ring back on, so she's gonna like somehow become like a soldier, when she'll have like a metal hand or whatnot, and then she's gonna fight in a mobile suit. I can't believe we called that. Minus Luis's metal hand, you know, we thought she's gonna get like cybernetics or something like that, because we didn't see anything else beyond the series that showed like anybody getting completely healed. But her getting her hand back and all that jazz was kind of a surprise. But we weren't far off from that call out, so I thought that was pretty funny. I just want to share you guys that story. I think it's hilariously bad how cliched and predictable Saji's storyline is alongside with Luis's. But at the same time, if you're a horrible person, you like myself and my friend, you could probably call what's gonna happen. It's terribly awesome. Another character I want to talk about too was Marina. Again, sticking to season 1 here, Marina was a character that's very much like Relina Peacecraft. And I think she served her point in the first season. Honestly, by second season, I think we shouldn't even really bothered with her. Even though Kazatosan gets destroyed and stuff like that, or amalgamated into the Alliance or Federation, I forgot what they switch. But I really feel like Marina's story was really told mostly in the first season. That fits in with the whole like arc between like the European front, the Middle East stuff. I think that was perfect. She fits her points, and she really hits home with Setsuna and builds off with his character at that point too. I thought she should be done at that point. Never really brought back. A lot of people would compare Marina to Relina, and some have said that Marina is better than Relina, and I go like, no, this is, again, I don't agree with that. Relina serves her purpose, and she not only does that, but she constantly shifts her purposes and her characters, staying true to the tone of pacifism, but changing herself. Marina is a one-trick pony, where she talks about, you know, peace and stuff like that, but she seemed like a really terrible like queen or ruler. She didn't know what she was supposed to do or what she needs to be doing. It doesn't seem like a person that should really be leading people. And she's just constantly talking about like peace and, you know, not trying to create conflict, but she doesn't really bring much to the table past season 1. Yes, she and Setsuna have like some kind of weird, awkward relationship, and they kind of fourth wall break that a bit, and kind of like, you guys have a relationship? It's like, no, we don't. But they kind of like have some like subtle like passive relationship that's not really noticeable. I don't know why they really want to bring Marina back. They say, like, I know people would say like, yes, well, her song with the children is trying to encourage people to stop fighting and stuff like, and bring the world together. I'm like, they did that in exposition. What more could we have done that as exposition and not include Marina? I felt a lot of her scenes could have been cut out and taken out from the series to focus more towards a lot of other things in season 2. Such as giving more time to refine that last 4 episodes, because the last 4 episodes just got really, really cattywampus. I didn't really like it a lot. But that's what I wanted to talk about Marina. I think she's a poorer version of Relina Peacecraft. She does have some of her points, but it's not to the finer point like Relina has. And that's not to say that I like Relina. I hate Relina Peacecraft, and I want to be very, very clear too. I hate a lot of the pacifistic characters in Gundam because they tend to be very hypocritical of themselves and hypocritical of the situation overall. But I will be talking about one particular pacifistic character. For those who are in the spoiler section, know exactly what I am talking about. No, it's not much of a spoiler, but I'll be talking about Saji when we talk about a little bit of season 2. I got one more thing here for season 1. I'll jump into season 2. And then with season 1, I actually want to bring that up with tying him to season 2 as well. So Patrick Colesour. He's a character you want to love to hate, but you still love him at the same time. So Patrick has that stupid plot armor shield, like the highest caliber. I would almost say like it rivals that of Kira's and Hiroyui's plot armor. But man, it's really funny. He's like the Team Rocket of this entire series. He shows up, runs his mouth, tries to do something, then he blasts off again. Quite literally. I think it's even funnier in season 2, episode 15, when Kati mentions about Patrick. Like Patrick's like, why am I being out there as a sortie and all that stuff like that? Oh well, I just want to use and abuse your invulnerability, Patrick. And I thought that was the most craziest thing. I've never seen a fourth wall breakage in a Gundam series or in the Gundam franchise ever until that one episode. I thought that was really, really funny, and it's a very, very subtle fourth wall breaking about mentioning about plot armor. And I was like, wow, the directors actually get that far. They actually attempted to say like, oh, this character, he's got plot armor, and there's no way he's ever gonna die. And I thought that was really, really funny. Nice little nod. But yeah, I wanted to just talk a little bit about Patrick, because he was like he's one of those characters I absolutely love to hate, and I loved him too, because he's that incorrigible little scamp that just won't go away. And as annoying as he is, he's just like, I'm kind of glad that he's there. I enjoyed Patrick, despite some of the things that he did I did not like. Going into season 2 spoilers too. So I want to talk about how season 2. So it's kind of funny. A lot of these more not recent, but at this time frame, a lot of the AU series tends to borrow a lot from previous series. In my previous reviews for Seed and Seed Destiny, they borrowed heavily from the original Gundam and from Zeta Gundam. You can almost argue at some points Wing to some extent when it comes to the politics in Destiny. Double O doesn't shy away from that too, but Double O's mostly original on its own. However, first season kind of copies off and bites off quite a bit from Gundam Wing. The second season, however, kind of bites a little bit more so from Zeta Gundam. I mentioned about Zeta Gundam because, much like the Titans, A-Laws are basically the Titans of Gundam 00. With the A-Laws, though, and it's kind of funny, like, I've seen some conversations regarding, like, how the Titans and A-Laws are exactly the same, and I would argue a little bit of a difference here, just a smidgen of a difference. And that's primarily their root basis as an organization or a faction. At the most base level root for the Titans is a group based on hatred, based on this innate, not a desire, but an innate hatred towards space noids and the Xeon remnants. That's why the Titans were created after Operation Stardust, and they pursued about going about their ways using that might makes right kind of a thing, and then terrorizing colonists and oppressing space noids. That's them, and it's very much a very deep-rooted hatred. A-Laws, on the other hand, though, is much more of a broader perspective of might makes right, and we can be jerks about it. It's a little bit different than Titans, and I feel like Titans are a lot worse than the A-Laws, as much as A-Laws have done some pretty horrendous things, right? We see that in Double O. I think that Titans is a lot worse of a group compared to the A-Laws, because Titans base everything on hatred, and their absolute hatred of space noids, their attacks and their abuse towards them, and then even the abuse of cyber new types. You could kind of say the same thing with the A-Laws, but the A-Laws never really dive into the whole super soldier stuff. Not really. Yes, they use some Apiras, but that's not a huge thing. But A-Laws are pretty dickish organization. I'm just gonna be flat out about that one. I also want to talk about how like the A-Laws is like another portion of the Titans, but instead of like where Titans, if we as seen in Zeta Gundam, they never really succeed in what they were trying to do. A-Laws is the what if the Titans succeed, right? What if the Federation or the Alliance gave the Titans the carte blanche, the keys to the world? And that's what happened with that. I thought that was kind of a cool what if, and it was kind of scary when that was first announced midway through second season. But the problem with that was that it was so short-lived. I felt like it was a shame that we didn't really get to see the A-Laws go even furthermore with what they wanted to do or what they can do. What it amounts to was like, oh, the Earth's Alliance now announces that we're going to be giving all the power to A-Laws, since they are the ones that are helping us and protecting us and all that stuff like that. And then we get into this huge final fight between A-Laws and Celestial Being, and then other factions such as Catharon. But after that fight, it just felt like it was nothing. It didn't amount to anything else, and the A-Laws were crushed when the A-Laws are supposed to be part of the Alliance now. So it was kind of confusing, and it was a little bit weird. Like, oh, all of a sudden, okay, A-Laws are no more. A-Laws are done. And the way that they did it was just so they can make way, so they can go into this Innovate Arc. And that's the next thing I want to kind of talk about. But before I talk about the Innovate Arc itself, I just found that it was kind of a shame that, just like the Titans themselves, I mean, the Titans, we got like a whole lot more with them in Zeta Gundam. In the A-Laws, while we got majority of the series with them, I felt like we were quickly brushed off, despite that we have spent so much time and effort building them up as an organization, a terrible organization, and so easily defeated. We don't get no like final final grandiose fight that staggers throughout or anything like that. No, they came in with a loud bark and they left with a whimper, is what it was. So it's a little bit disappointing right there. I think it was an absolute waste. Let me just quickly review this information here about the Innovates, because there's quite a bit of information I actually did a lot more typing down for the Innovate information here. So I'm like, okay, I want to kind of review that real quick here. Keep in mind, I wrote this a week ago. And I'm like, I'm trying to remember that. Well, I still have Age fresh in my mind. So I'm like, I want to talk about Age, but I want to get over that fact of the matter. Okay. Now, I see what it is. It was just an information dump. It was what I had right here. But it really comes down to this. So next thing I kind of want to talk about when it comes to second season, and like I was already alluding to, was the Innovate arc, right? The final arc in this entire series. And I don't know how to really... I've already kind of alluded towards what I felt about it, which was that I felt it was very rushed. From A-Laws being quickly destroyed and dismantled almost to get to the Innovates. And the Innovate arc was already short as it was. I think it starts off like not even like episode 49, even though the Innovates have been around since second season, like the beginning of second season, but the heaviest focus were in the last 9 to 10 episodes. And the problem I have with that one, though, was that everything was super rushed. Like, they just didn't have enough time. And it's kind of funny because this entire series, I think I've only notated that there were only like 1 or 2 clip episodes. And here's the funny thing about those clip episodes is that they actually weren't really clip episodes because it had a lot of new footage in there. Like it could have been an episode on its own, but they do recap things that had happened previously in the first season. So the series had its time. And I think it just ran out of time trying to tell the story about the Innovates or get to the point with the Innovates. And too long with A-Laws. I don't know what had happened right there, but it was so short-lived with the Innovates and their goals and their objectives, or in this case, Ribbon's objectives. I like that he was the villain, though, and it was revealed that by the end of season 1, but it just felt like he didn't really get to do a whole lot. He was just sitting there. I like my masterminding, scheming kind of a characters, right? Like I enjoy like Littlefingers and stuff like that, but I felt like Ribbons really didn't get to do a whole lot. And his interactions were like basically the last few episodes, and I was like, really? Even though you kind of pulled the strings at some parts of the series, you didn't really get to do a whole lot, and I was kind of like ashamed about that. I felt like maybe like the last few episodes definitely could have used like 2 more episodes to really develop the ending, but it just came by way too fast, especially how like the final episodes like alludes to the movie and stuff like that. And I just didn't like how it was so abrupt. I'll talk more about the ending itself too. Wasn't a fantastic finale to this series, in my opinion. One thing I really did like about the Innovate arc, and more so just about the Innovates themselves, it goes right back to what I was talking about in the beginning, towards the beginning of this video, or like midway through it at least, as the whole religious aspects of this series. And it's quite literally, the Innovates are angels, and Ribbons is Satan. Satan, the devil, Lucifer, however you want to call him, but that's basically it. His allegories of that. Aeolia Schimberg is basically God, or basically a human playing God, because he's quite literally creating a new humanity. That was his whole plan all along for this entire series. It's to create or evolve human beings into innovators to have the dialogues that come. He's literally, quite literally, playing God. There's a lot of characters that play God at times, but he's the equivalent of that. And as this God, he creates the Innovates to basically enact upon his plans to foresee and facilitate those actions. Just like how God created angels to basically be his instruments of divinity and action. So it's very, very similar between, like God, Aeolia, angels, and the Innovates. And then specifically with the angels and the Innovates part, we have is we have Lucifer, Satan. I just call him Satan. That's like the easiest way. It makes me think of Mr. Satan from Dragon Ball Z. But Satan, and then we have Ribbons. Both of them are very similar, and just that really, for those who are not familiar with the Bible or anything like that, but Lucifer, who took so much pride in what he is, because he's an angel of this level of perfection, wanted to create his own kind of visage or whatnot, and went against God's will, trying to do his own things because of his own perception of perfection. Because of him going against God, led to his literal downfall, becoming the fallen angel, and then his eventual ruling over hell, or creating his own world, which is hell itself too. That's just capsizing. I'm not going to go into this whole biblical stuff or whatnot. I don't care too much, but it's kind of fascinating how they play along and they tie along or make a lot of these allegories to each other. So with Ribbons is pretty much just like Satan. Aeolia Schimberg created Innovates. He is one of the Innovate models that were created to facilitate Aeolia's ideologies and to pursue creating the Innovators. But unlike anybody else, he sees himself, just like the Innovates, to be a far superior being than humans, and that he should be more cherished than the humans. And he thinks that his creator was wrong, and he wants to create his own world. Does that not sound familiar to Satan? I don't know what does. But he tries to create his own world, or in this case, he's going to create our own living hell. So I thought it was kind of really fascinating how there's these like ties in here within the Gundam universe. I mean, we've never seen anything like this in the franchise overall. And they try to tie this in here and create this parallels, like biblical parallels between Ribbons and Satan and God and angels and stuff like that. I thought that was Really, really cool, really, really neat. This is just me touching the iceberg of this, like touching that little tip. There's so much more beyond that one too. And that's what I want to. I also want to kind of mention too. One thing I mentioned earlier on was Veda, and I kind of thought it was kind of funny too because with Veda, it was like okay, so it's like this knowledge thing. The one thing I got from Veda was the whole tree of forbidden knowledge, right? And it's funny with the Innovates because their sexuality is their I don't know how to say it's not sexuality because they do describe themselves as male and female, but their genderization or the way that we can view their gender is very skewed because a lot of them are very effeminate features. Be it that they're the male or female counterparts, they're very effeminate. Tyria is a great example of this, where like you see Tyria and like if you didn't know better, you'd think that Tyria was a girl, but he's not. He's a he. He's a guy. And vice versa with him is Regine. They look almost identically the same, but she is a she and Tyria is a he. But what I want to bring about is that the whole thing with the Veda, and the Veda is a tree of knowledge. So based on this one right here, and it's funny, I wrote this down too. So Veda is a Sanskrit word for knowledge or wisdom. So I wasn't far off from that to begin with. Veda itself is the system that they use to gain knowledge or has extensive knowledge around the world and the Gundam-meisters, the machines of the world, those sort of things. And with this tree of knowledge, this Veda, kind of again goes right back to the whole biblical perspective. And I'll tell a big brief story of Genesis, mostly the end part, at least dealing with the tree. Is that in the story of Genesis, the book or the tree of forbidden fruit was there, stated that like God said like you can enjoy my world, but you cannot have a fruit of my forbidden tree. I forgot if there's anything, but basically, it is a woman that is tempted by the snake, or in the actual stories of Eve, tempted by Satan to take a bite of this fruit of knowledge. And they're being enticing Adam to take a bite of this fruit. And they do so as well. And then they are eventually purged out of Eden itself. Very similar, and this is just me scraping along here. I'm pretty sure there's something much more deeper to this, but very similar to that story right there of Genesis. We have Alexander, who in the special edition movies, it's hinted heavily that he has a relationship with Ribbons. And is an effeminate looking man too. So, and Women is from the rib of Adam, so it's not necessarily that they're truly different necessarily. But, and you could take it into an allegory too about like who took a bite of the apple too. Was it really Eve or was it Adam? But it was Alexander that was tempted by Ribbons to eventually get to and take Veda for himself to control all this vast power and knowledge and literally kill God, Aeolia Shinberg. And then his fall from grace, right? His being casted from Eden, because it is then Ribbons who casts him aside and basically lets Alexander die. So I think it's like interesting parallels. Again, we see like the first subset of parallels mostly with the Innovates. Now we see this other subset in season 1 or at the very end of season 1. So I just thought that was some really, really cool things I wanted to talk about regarding the religious aspects of 00. So other things I wanted to talk about, there's a couple more things I want to talk about season 2 at least, is particularly Saji. I'm going to come right back to Saji again. Now, like I mentioned before, I really hate pacifistic characters because I find them very hypocritical about who they are and how they go about things and how they perceive the world around them. Saji's no different at the beginning. I really hated him at the beginning of season 2 because when he comes in here, he immediately finds out that, oh, Setsuna's part of Celestial Being. It's you guys' fault. You guys are starting all these fights and these wars, and we didn't have to fight this. And because of all your fighting, poor little me and Luis got involved and stuff like that. And I'm like, and you weren't caring about the world around you. That you didn't realize that in your perfect little world that there was already fights happening across continents, and you have no acknowledgement of this, yet you ignore it, and you only cared about it when it impacts you. And then your only response to that is to blame others but yourself. And then when you take no action for it, you continue to blame others and not yourself. Right, that is the most privileged thing I've ever heard from, like, mostly from these pacifistic characters to say. And it's very frustrating to hear when pacifistic characters, or I would say like people in real life too, because I come across this many times myself, telling you how things should be, but they don't have the real perspective of what's really going on in the world around them. Their only perception of the world is what they perceive it to be, and not what is really going on in the world. So that's again, another, in a little nutshell, perceptions of these kind of pacifistic characters and how frustrating and irritating they are, and a little bit of Saji, because that's what we get in the very beginning in season 2 with Saji. However, despite how whiny, hypocritical, and ignorant that he is as a character, he's not one that doesn't learn, though. Unlike most other characters that we come across that are like Saji, he's actually one of the few characters that actually learns from his mistakes and learns more about the world around him and actually takes some level of an action. Though he is still whiny to the levels of Shinji, I like it that his name is Saji, but she's like Shinji from Neo Genesis Evangelion, he takes that perspective of being whiny and whatnot and slowly changes to go from like, okay, I don't agree with fighting, I'm not going to fight myself, but I'm going to try and help and fight in my own way. After he had made some really, really bad and critical blunders himself. I think there was one thing that surprised me the most about Saji is in one of the episodes. This seems like something that Katz would definitely do or something like that. Not that he's a pacifist character. Oh, excuse me. I apologize. Oof. That one's been fighting for a while. Sorry about that. But unlike other characters, there's a moment in Gundam 00 where Saji was going to take the 00 Riser to go chase after Louise to talk to her and stuff like that. And then just as he's about to do it, he thought about what happened to the Catharon people. When he talked in what he felt was absolute confidence that he would never get squelched on or get in trouble for, and when he talked to Sergei about where the Catharon people were hiding. Yeah, your stupidity cost people's lives. Lots of people's lives. And it's kind of surprising that he actually realizes this. And just before he even takes the 00 Riser, like the flight, he thinks back to that. And it's a really good poignant moment of using a flashback. And I love how they did that. And it hits so much home with his character. And I was like, oh my God, he actually learned. He isn't going to do something stupid that we normally would see in the entire Gundam franchise. Usually a character in his position would do exactly what we think he was going to do. And for the first time when I was watching it for the first time for Gundam 00, and my friend too, the first time, Saji broke cliche. He broke character almost for us. Because he was fitting the cliche of this annoying, whiny, privileged character. And he learned, and he realizes. And I remember I sat there like, oh my God. He actually learned. He actually is changing as a little bit of a, just even almost fractional portion, he's changing as a character. I'm like, wow, that's impressive. That's some pretty solid writing, and that floored me that moment when I had watched it with Saji, because up until that moment, I hated Saji. I absolutely hated Saji. Not saying that scene redeemed him completely, but it changed how I perceived Saji from that point. And then, of course, his future actions, which is him helping Setsuna more, being more involved with Celestial Being in a more pacifistic way. He's not going to fight directly, but he's going to help, right? He's gonna pilot the Double O Riser. He's gonna try and reach out to Luis, even though it's a selfish thing that he's doing, though. But at the same time, hopefully stopping her from fighting too. So I thought that was some fascinating things, some interesting things, and a little bit of a redemption for Saji. Otherwise, if he kept going the way he would have been right up there with my top tier hated characters in the Gundam franchise. Redeems himself, not entirely, but he redeems himself, and he really changes my perspective on like the writing in Gundam itself. Like, I mean, we get different writers, of course, but I was just like surprised to see that he changed as a character. So that's awesome. He redeemed himself in some manner or form. He redeemed himself in my eyes. Now, last thing I want to talk about when it comes to season 2 is the final episode. This is gonna be flat out spoilers for the most part, I think. But I mean, we're already in spoiler section. But so first and foremost, the fighting, cool. I love a lot of the fighting. And you get some really, really cool last moment moves from like Lyle. I thought that was super cool. Like, it's like, Haro, how much time do I have left in my Trans Am? You got 1 second. And I'm like, dude, what is he gonna do in 1 second to finish off? It wasn't Hilling that he was fighting. It was is it Revive? I think Revival. I think is who he was fighting at the time, because Hilling was killed by Alleluia, if I'm not mistaken here. But that split second is all he needed, and it was like quite literally like a Toro moment, like a matador against a bull, and just like flips her right around Revive, and then just like shanks and blasts with his GN pistol. I thought that was amazing. I'm like, one of the cooler moments in a Gundam fight I have seen. I'm like, dang, that caught me off guard. I was like, dang, that was so cool. And even on the rewatch, it is still absolutely amazing. I was like, I forgot about that scene. I remember back then, and I rewatched, and I'm like, yeah, came right back to me. Like, oh my god, definitely gonna keep that down. Like, that was a really awesome moment. It's also kind of cool too. This is the very first time in the entire Gundam franchise where the main protagonist and the antagonist not only abandon their new super cool upgraded suits for the final fight, but they fight each other in the original suits that they originally piloted. Ribbons pilots the O Gundam after stealing a GN reactor, GN drive from the O Riser, and Setsuna takes the remaining drive and puts it into his old Exia Gundam, and they duke it out. Not only was that a first time, and it was a cool fight itself, albeit very, very short, very, very short. It's very poignant, though. Again, it was going with the entire series, again with the whole biblical aspects and stuff like that too. Setsuna, who had originally seen the O Gundam and wanting to be a Gundam himself in the sense too, how it ended war, or ended a conflict, but saw the O Gundam like an angel, this deity thing, this godlike thing, right? And then of course Ribbons absorbing in his egotism and his pride, and going like, yes, view me, I am the perfect being here, I'm higher than you, and I'm only gonna let you live just because you relish me as so. You deserve to live. And that was kind of poignant, because then it was in the beginning of the series. We kind of get that in flashbacks, and then it comes to here where Setsuna's like, there is no God, there is no religion or whatnot, and he sees Ribbons not as this angelic figure, no, or this deity, no. He sees Ribbons as a faulty, flawed being that must be destroyed. And I thought that was kind of funny. Like, it begins with the O Gundam and it ends with the O Gundam. Exia cuts it down to Ribbons. Well, not really cuts it down to Ribbons, just one good strike. But still, I thought that was really, really poignant with Setsuna's character, and finishing it off between Setsuna and Ribbons in that manner. It was really, really cool. I like that, how they've written that in there. Other than that, the ending episode kind of ends very abruptly. I didn't like that. It ends very abruptly. We kind of got a little bit of the fight and all that jazz, and it stops. I felt like there could be a little bit more development in between the time frames of the fights and stuff like that. Like one more episode could have done it in. That final fight between him and Ribbons, and then there's like the cut between after the Reborns, Gundam and Double O Riser were completely screwed at that point, and then moving on to their older Gundams. I felt that it was a really bad cut. Like it quickly cut to them to like doing this when it requires time. Moving the drives, they're not an easy feat, and then installing them too. I get it, they're trying to cut it for the sake of the episode itself, but I just felt that was really bad. This reminds me of like cuts that you would see in a compilation movie. A compilation movie. This is a series, folks. We're seeing this in a compilation movie cut in a series. I don't think that was a really good choice there. I get that they were squeezing for time and they're trying to finish up the final episode, but it could have gone for another episode or something like that. I also like how it just did not really have an epilogue at all. We didn't get any epilogue other than at the very end of the episode, it gives us like, you know, coming soon, the movie for Double O and the dialogues to come, that sort of thing. It was kind of disappointing. Kind of disappointing right there. I don't know how to react to that, to be honest. But that's all I really want to say about Double O when it comes to like the spoiler aspects. I do want to get to my next segment here. I'm going to keep up with the spoilers though. Is my favorite suits of the series, or just talking about the suits of the series itself. So those of you who are not familiar with this segment here, basically with every single Gundam series that's introduced or brought into the Gundam franchise, we get a slew of like new suits, designs, redesigns, battleships, those sort of things. Double O is no exception to the fact of the matter, because we get a ton of brand new suits. We do get some not redesigns, but a lot of homage designs to like Xeon-esque, like Mono Eye stuff and things like that. That said, though, I mean, I didn't really care for a lot of the suits in this series. A lot of them were just kind of They weren't really that great looking and stuff like that. Not that impressive. I do want to maybe say like the Jinxes kind of look cool, but not enough for me to go like, yeah. So, I mean, like, it's a little bit disappointing here with the suit design, suit choices for this series. Granted, the fighting was really cool with them. But I just want to kind of start off, I want to just bring up at least one honorable mention, because I just feel like it's kind of a lazy cut, but it's an homage to the original Gundam. Now, when we see the O Gundam here, it's actually in its O Gundam colors here, the actual deployment colors, which is, again, if you look at it, it's basically the original Gundam. I really like the design. I like the little harken back to it. You know, it's just a redesign of the original Gundam brought into the Double O world. I thought it was kind of cool. A beginning and an end, essentially. So it's a really neat base level suit. I just want to say it's an honorable mention. It's not one of my top tier favorites, because I would rather pick the original Gundam over the O Gundam, but it's a really cool design. I like a lot of it too. I do want to say though, with the Double O suits, a lot of them have really cool like design and features to them. I like a lot of the details that go into a lot of these suits. You're gonna see that as we keep going through the suits here. But my first suit that I really did like in this series here is the GN Archer. I thought this is one of the more unique mobile suits in this series here. It's how do I put it? Like, most of the time we see a lot of Gundams and mobile suits. They got a very emasculating look to them. Not often do we come across a feminine mobile suits or a feminine-based Gundams. We do have some of them, but not by a whole lot. So this adds into their very effeminate-looking mobile suit. And I actually really do dig a lot of the sleek designs, the I want to call it jagged curvatures to this suit here. It does transform, so it's another one thing that I do like about it too, because you know me, I love my transforming mobile suits. Really, really cool. I also like how it docks the Arios in later on episodes once we do get the Arios out and rolling. I think it's a really just neat and nifty looking design. Super cool mobile suit. I like it a lot. My next one I like, and it pairs up with hers, I actually do like the Curious, because this is the upgraded Gundam for Alleluia. The only thing I don't like about the Gundam, and it's kind of weird, is I hate the kneecaps. It's got these huge like fins that stick out that are really, really annoying and ugly. But other than that, I really do like the overall design, its transformation too, and the weapons or its armaments that it has. Like when it transforms, it's like it's a much more cooler Wave Rider-esque looking suit, or like transformation or flight mode. I really like that a lot. Super cool. And then this thing, which is its shield, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it's gonna be, yeah, it's not the shield, it's the wings. It can open up and crush things, so I thought that was really, really cool. Again, like it a lot. Cool suit. We're gonna come down to my final two for this series here, but I really, really like the Exia Gundam. What's the rollout colors? I'm kind of curious. It's not the same. Oh, okay. But I really love the Exia Gundam. From the first time we see it to the very end of the series too, I just love it for its simplicity. It's a in-your-face kind of a Gundam. It's got blades, blades, blades. That's all I gotta say. Between its GN sword, where is that GN sword? Like, we get the GN sword, which is like a cool, like somewhat of a shield too. And then it pops up to be a sword. It can pop down to be its little beam rifle. Not beam rifle. Is it a beam rifle? It's like a beam gun. Okay, let's just put it that way. And then it's got this GN blade that's on the sides of it. Really, really cool. It's like physical blades. And then you got more beams. You got more blades up. It's got beam sabers itself too. So it's got all these blades. It's a very close, in-your-face kind of a Gundam. Again, when I talk about detail and tech and like details and whatnot, I really love a lot of the detail on this Gundam. It feels kind of bare bonesy, but at the same time, it's got a lot of power and meat behind it. So it's just a really cool. One thing I don't like about the design, the one thing I don't like about it, is what in the world do these stupid little fins do? Like, when it doesn't deploy, we've only seen it like a couple of times in the series where it just like deploys down, and then when it's ready to deploy, it raises up. I'm like, what does it do? Is it supposed to be kind of like windbreaker kind of stuff, like a spoiler on a car? I couldn't really figure out what's the purpose of those. I thought it kind of looked cheesy and goofy, but I tried to think of the realistic usage of this Gundam itself and the realism in the series too. Like, if it's a suit that's supposed to be very, very fast and up close, the point of like a spoiler or fins is to like make it a little bit more aerodynamic, a little bit more controlled, keep it more grounded. So maybe like the fins are supposed to help it like not to break out the wind and allow it to traverse faster across like a lower plane or something. I'm not entirely certain, but that's what I can only assume based on limited knowledge I have and understanding about aerodynamics and like the utilization of like spoilers or fins on like cars and airplanes and stuff like that. But that's what my thoughts on it. But I still like the Exia Gundam in its armor. It's a really cool looking Gundam. But if I'm going to talk about my favorite Gundam or suit in this entire series, 00 Riser. I would almost say the 00, but between the 00 and 00 Riser, I just liked it with the Riser just backpack or jetpack on it, because it gives it a lot more emphasis on the looks of itself. So very much functions similar to the Exia, but it's more of a mid-range suit. So it has like some really cool weapons. Let me see, like the sword rifle. That is its sword rifle, which then can turn into a sword itself. Kind of cool, just like how the first GN blade was. And then later on, it gets this sword too, which it functions as both a blade and a gun at the same time. And I'm like, this is such a cool suit. The wing binders can actually be used as like in unison with the GN sword to create a gigantic beam saber. And I'm like, what? That's so cool. Very versatile, very fast, very formidable with its twin GN drive. So I really liked the 00 Riser. It's a really cool suit. But that's all I wanted to say about the 00 suits. So let me go ahead and just do this here for our stream watchers and for future, well, YouTube watchers as well too. So hopefully you guys have returned back or stopped off at this point here. I am no longer talking about spoilers. Sorry about that. So I want to talk about the next little segment I like to talk about, which is I'm new to the Gundam franchise. Should I watch Gundam 00 first? Yes. Actually, yes. This is one of the top tier Gundam series I would highly recommend to watch first, amongst many other series I do recommend. This is a very easily accessible series that's self-contained in and of itself, and utilizes a lot of the core elements of the Gundam franchise, and is basically a nice little foray or entry point into the Gundam series or Gundam franchise, because it's something that you can see consistent with other Gundam series as well. Albeit it's not as highly politicized or whatnot with some of the other series, but it's a very good entry point nonetheless. So yes, I do recommend this if you are new to the Gundam franchise. Check out Gundam 00. Now, as for a overall, Gundam 00 is a sleek and fun Gundam series. I find it that it has an appropriate balance between the story, the characters, and the action to tell a very evolving political conflict with religious undertones. There are moments in this series that can get a little bit clunky and a little bit overtly preachy and slow, akin to what we see in first season, and then of course a little bit clunkiness in second season. But even though it kind of loses out its steam and momentum from those points, most of it doesn't stop the series in its entirety, as it is carried on by the intense and incredible action sequences and enthralling story. Mobile Suit Gundam 00 gets a 4 out of 5. I definitely recommend this Gundam series to anybody in general. It's a very, again, like I mentioned, an accessible series. It's a very fun watch, very, very enjoyable. Great gate entryway point for the Gundam franchise. My only ifs and points I have about it are just, there's some moments where it gets slow in the story. It can get a little bit preachy at times too. And for those who want more of a story, I mean, it doesn't have the story, but sometimes it gets strung along by action primarily, especially in second season. But other than that, it's a great series. I cannot not recommend this series. Like more than enough. That said too, we're not done with this review because we still got 2 more things to review here. I'm not going to go too much on the second thing I'll be talking about here, which is going to be I don't have it, I apologize. But I'm going to be talking about the special edition movies. Now, real quick with the special edition movies, there isn't anything too special about them. They are quite literally a 3-part, hour and about 35-minute episode movie each of the series. They're compilation movies. The first movie covers the first season, while the latter 2 movies covers second season. It covers one half of it and the other covers the other half. It's gonna be a little bit awkward when I say it that way, but there's not much else different about that. The story is exactly the same as we're aware about that regarding celestial beings' involvement around the world. Just like many other compilation movies, these movies are no more different than what we're familiar with compilation movies. They have a tendency to cut a lot of episodes, cut a lot of subplots or major plots too. A lot of the character dialogue and involvements or stories around the characters have been either boiled down to nothing or reduced. And we're just more of a higher focus on certain aspects of it, mostly around the key elements that happen in the series, alongside with key focus on certain characters. That being said, though, one thing that's kind of not entirely unique to Gundam 00 is that we do get some newer scenes. Some of the newer scenes that we do get in Gundam 00 is mostly of Ribbons and really establishing him as the main villain from the very beginning. We also get some newer scenes regarding fight sequences or reorganization of that, but not by a whole lot. There's not much. I'll probably do like another Gundam. What's a Gundam difference between the series and the movies? But I kind of highlighted most of the pivotal points here. I'll just talk about some of the things that I had primarily issues with these 3 movies. So the first and foremost, like I mentioned, it takes a lot of the character subplots and episodes out of it. Now that's kind of fine for the most part because we're condensing a 50 episode series into 4 hours, 4.5 hours basically. 4 hours and 45 minutes because they're an hour and 35 minutes each. And the problem I have with that though is that what makes Double O a very enjoyable series is the characters themselves. So a lot of characters, stories, or sub stories or subplots get absolutely axed from here. A lot of Sumeragi's stuff, a lot of Somapira's, Sergei, even the Gundamizers themselves too. They have a lot of their portions taken out, unless it's relevant to the plot of the story itself. It is taken out. It is completely removed. And I think that's what made the series really, really enjoyable. So they try to boil it down to just that. It's not so great, especially if you're new to watching Gundam and you're trying to watch this for the first time. The other thing that was an issue with this too was that the pacing of the movies themselves. It gets very, very clunky and very choppy at parts. I think one that was really noticeable that I saw was like towards the beginning of the movie. Like I think it was like the first 5 minutes. We get the scene where Setsuna's fighting against Graham Acre, and then it immediately cuts to a fight sequence between him and Sergei when they fought for the first time. And I thought that was a little just abrupt, and it was like, wait, what? I thought we were fighting Graham here, and now we're cutting to this. And it wasn't a montage sequence or anything like that. It was like a literal transitional cut to that. So I thought that was just very inappropriate. This happens multiple times throughout the entire 3 movies. And it makes it very, very clunky. Sure, the movies have a lot of action to them. They're fun to watch. But as for a story perspective or whatnot, it's a little bit of a mess. It's hard to follow through, especially with a lot of things being cut out of it. Much of the story is expositioned. So for someone who's never watched Gundam 00 before, you're going to have a hard time getting into the movies. Myself, after watching the series itself, or I think anybody else who's watched the 00 series itself, won't have that much of a hard time, but they're just going to be more of a letdown watching these movies because it cuts out a lot of the good meat from the series. Yes, we trimmed off the fat, but there wasn't a lot of fat in Gundam 00 in my opinion. What we ended up chopping off is a lot of the meat, and all we got was just like one good bite maybe, and then a lot of bone. It was very, very disappointing at that point. Just to even get into it really quick too, is like, if you're new to the Gundam, I'm new to the Gundam franchise, should I watch the special edition? Oh, sorry. The special edition one. Let me put this up on the big screen for you folks here. Special edition movies. No, if you are new to the Gundam franchise, do not watch this first. In fact, you're better off watching the series first. Ooh, excuse me. Sorry, my cat's just sleeping in trash again and distracted me. Sorry about that. Should you watch this first? And I'm going to say no. Do not watch the special edition movies first. You're better off watching the series. Start with these guys instead. You get a lot more out of it. And let me just get to my critical points about that again. So it's a choppy, very rough watch of a compilation of the series itself. It does not really adhere. It does have some of the core elements in there just because it's from the series itself, but it's very poorly advocated or portrayed. But the worst offender of all is that it sets a really bad expectation of going into the Gundam franchise. You're watching a cobbled up hodgepodge, hoppy choppy movies versus a very methodically told story. So no, don't watch this first. This is something I would not recommend to anybody that's new to the Gundam franchise. Skip this. Start with these instead. That said, as for an overall, I mean, I've already pretty much stated, but just to reiterate it here, the special edition movies for Gundam 00 is a clunky, like a shorthanded clunky mess is the best way to put it. I apologize. I apologize. My little guys need attention. It's been about an hour. Yeah, oh my god, almost 2 hours. Dang it. I was trying to not Try not to take too much time doing these, but I guess I cannot avoid that. Anywho, I apologize. As for an overall, the special edition movies for Gundam Seed is a shorthanded, clunky mess. It takes a lot of the elements that make the series really, really fun to watch and really enjoyable, and really just cuts that all away, just so we can fit within the 1 hour and 35-minute time frame. While the action is very heavy and fast in the movies, and there are some newer scenes added to it to add more to the story, in all honesty, it wasn't enough to redeem these movies as something that I would recommend to watch. Again, you are much better off watching the series than the special edition movies. If anything, just watching it for the newer scenes. That said, Mobile Suit Gundam 00 special edition movies gets not so great 2 out of 5. Now, we're almost done here, folks. I appreciate you guys sticking around and listening to me ramble here, but I got one more thing for us. That's the 00 movie. Yeah, so let's just dive right into it. Let me give you the gist for you guys who are on our non-spoiler section right here. The story takes place in the year 2314. This is 2 years after the events that ended the series, or how the series ended. The return of a derelict ship with unknown entities shakes the world into arms again against a new I'm trying to like be really, really cool and read off on this, so I'm just gonna read straight off. I don't know why I try to tell it to you guys like this and read like that, but with the story here, and I'll let you know I write these. I don't try to copy and paste it from somewhere. I rephrase these because I like to rephrase it my own way. Anyways, for the story of wow, brain derping, tired here. Sorry, we got this. But yeah, for the story for Awakening of the Trailblazer, it takes place in the year 2314. 2 years after the end of the series itself, the return of a derelict ship with unknown entities shakes the world into arms against a new threat, and Celestial Being and the 4 Gundam Meisters must intervene for the dialogues to come. This is a flat 2-hour-long movie. I'm surprised they managed to squeeze in quite a bit into this here, and I do have to say, and it says it right here on this box right here too. I'm gonna try and get it right there. Maybe I can get it at the focus. Focus. Maybe not. There we go. It is the first theatrical movie for Gundam in over 19 years. That's what it says on the box, folks. I say that because it's not far off. When it says 19 years, you would think like, well, wouldn't that not... Didn't Gundam Wing Endless Waltz count? And here's the stipulation. It's the first new Gundam movie in 19 years that is not a compilation or an OVA, originally in that manner or form. So yes, the last time that we saw a Gundam movie in theaters was actually Gundam Wing Endless Waltz, but that was actually based off of an OVA, a 3-part OVA. So, 00, the Awakening of a Trailblazer is the first time an original Gundam movie was released. And for referential points too, previously the last few Gundam movies that were released theatrically that were original and not a compilation or OVA was Char's Counterattack, F91, and I can't believe I have to remember and say this one. I wish I never had to mention this ever again. G-Savior. I'm actually surprised I got a theatrical release. I really am surprised I got a theatrical release, but it did. God help the souls that sat down in the theater to watch that, and I can only hope that they left that theater quicker than anything else after watching the first 5 minutes of that trash. Okay, enough about G-Saver, more about Awakening of the Trailblazer. So, right off the bat, what I want to talk about this movie is that it feels very much like a compilation movie. It's very fast paced. It cuts very, very quickly at times. a lot of this movie, I felt like could have been stretched out and given more time. Like, it could have been a season of its own. Like, 00 could have had a third season, and it would have been Awakening of the Trailblazer. It's just, there was so much that was cut out. I feel like there was, like, moments of dialogue that we were missing out, and we only got, like, the key moments of those dialogues. Key character development moments, and then key moments of telling the story or developing the story to push it along. I felt like there was so much more that we could have gone that the movie did not have the time to address. And it's just trying to go like bam, 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 plot point, plot point, plot point, and just moving along. Not necessarily that's entirely a bad thing, but I mean, there's some other things that do intersect with this where it hinders the movie a little bit for me, at least. For me, as I would say. Like, for an example, would be character deaths. And I'm not going to talk about it right here yet, but for character deaths, I feel like a lot of them, these are characters that we've seen from the series, or some of them are new characters too. But these character deaths are way too fast. They happen in a blink of an eye. You know, you blink, you missed it, kind of a thing. And for these characters who were pretty important characters in the series, I feel like their deaths just disrespected them, and we didn't get enough time or to acknowledge the importance of their death. Sorry, guys. Ow. Ooh. I got an itchy throat right now. Hang on. My God. Super side note. I just realized that the art cover that I'm using is actually the art cover from this one. I'll talk a little bit more on my Blu-ray in a little bit. Because it's not right stuff. Not bootleg either. Don't think it's bootleg. But yes, so with these deaths, and they just felt so short and all that. But the thing is that with these deaths, it felt like it would have been like one of those episodes in like any given series, where it would have been devoted around this character, and then their eventual demise at the end, or like midway through the episode, or something like that. So I felt like it was a big disservice to some of these characters that just died like that, and if you didn't pay attention, oh well, and we move along with the story. I just felt like it could have been done or handled a lot better. What can you do when you're trying to fit a lot in 2 hours? Now, with that 2 hours being said too, this movie has some of the most crazy and intense action. Just like it is in 00, the series itself, but just take that and dial it to an 11 instead. The action is incredibly fast-paced, intense, and in your face. It gets so much so at portions that it gets a little bit much for me, and I had to like kind of like, okay, let me step back a little bit. It's very, very like fast-paced, crazy. It reminds me like Bourne Identity level like speeds, but there's so much going on. It's a crazy good amount of fun action. I enjoyed it a lot, even though it overwhelmed me at times. Now, before I get to my spoiler section, I do want to say this, and it's not a spoiler, but heads up. For those of you who've never seen this movie before, there is post-credit scenes. I've never really seen this in a Gundam movie or anything else like that, with the exception of the 00 series. But at the end of the movie, don't stop at the credits. Skip the credits, fast forward the credits, or watch through the credits. However you watch a movie, right? But stick around, because at the very end, there's still about 2 minutes of additional scenes that complete not just the movie, but the 00 series overall. So definitely stick around, watch that. That said, though, we're about to go into spoiler alert territory, folks. So for those who don't want to listen to this part here, go ahead and skip along in the video here. And again, once you see the banners off, I will be getting into talking about if you're new to the Gundam franchise, should you or should you not start with this first. So that's where we'll leave off here. Otherwise, let's go ahead and talk about some spoilers about the movie itself. So the first thing I want to talk about is that, oh my god, aliens. This is the first time we deal with aliens in the Gundam franchise entirely. It's kind of exciting because it's a different perspective, a different take, a different way of approaching the entire Gundam franchise. The even bigger difference too is that, you know, how traditionally we see aliens in a lot of in the sci-fi medium being like humanoid based aliens for the most part, right? It was really nice and very refreshing to see the L's, the L's aliens are not humanoid, and that they are like this like a very different type of an alien, this intangible entity that we could not communicate with. And I really like how they played with the whole communication aspect and really develop on that whole dialogues to come kind of thing. I thought that was really, really cool. I really enjoyed that. Again, being this abstract form, and their way of communicating was like fusing with the entities that they're trying to communicate with, and almost looks like killing them. So I thought it was like, how do you communicate with these things and not get into a conflict with them, right? And they are very formidable too. It seems like one of those like horde-esque movies where like there's an amassing swarm, there's nothing you can do, and it feels so hopeless. And it just gets really crazy with that. So I thought that was really cool and interesting how they brought that into the folds, especially with the actiony portions of this movie. One other thing I really liked about it is when they were first introduced too. So after the fragments of that derelict ship are destroyed and land on Earth, the whole entire movie, which was like mobile suits and like traditional Gundam, turned 180 into a completely different movie. It was like a scary movie at that point. Like the way that we were introduced to the L's, and like we were seeing like a ribbon metal clone and stuff like that. And then later on with Alleluia and Soma Pires, or Maria at this point, being chased down by like the vehicles and stuff like that were L's were turning into. It was like becoming like a horror movie, and like Terminator meets Maximum Overdrive. For a moment, when I first had time to watch this movie, I stopped and I go like, wait a second here. Did Stephen King just like came into the Japanese studio and like literally took over directing and writing of this portion of the movie? Because that's what it felt like to me. It was a very different movie, and I was like, am I watching a Gundam or am I watching a horror movie? And so I thought it was really cool. I really liked that, like that little tonal shift just for like that like 10 minutes of the movie, I believe. Very, very cool. I liked it a lot. It was very enjoyable. Now for the deaths, particularly I didn't care for Desmond Shaman. You don't even get his name that much in this movie, and his death was super forgettable. I was hoping that it was going to develop to be something, but nothing really developed from his death or whatever happened to him. We assume that he's dead at least. But the ones I would talk about particularly is Andre and Graham Acre. I want to talk about Andre first, since he's the first one that does die. This was a little bit of a difficulty for me because I hated him in the series. I hated him because he did not attempt to even talk to his father. He just hated his father, Sergei, for, you know, being a soldier and letting his mother die and all that stuff, and not really truly understanding his father. And it goes right back to the whole communication aspect, that core element in the Gundam franchise. But, you know, as much as I didn't like him as a character, I didn't want to see him go because he was pretty pivotal and important in the series. And I felt like I wanted to see him stand out more. Now, his death when he was trying to sacrifice himself to prevent an L's like esque ship from getting into Earth's atmosphere, that was a heroic sacrifice. But I just felt that, oh, of course, like it was like a blink and you miss it kind of a situation. It was a little bit more disrespect of his character, and I didn't like that. I didn't like him at all, but I think he deserved a little bit more screen time, and he only had like a few moments in the entire movie. So like, unless you really like, for me, I finished watching 00. I watched the special edition movies, and then I went into watching Awakening, and I know who I know who Andre was. If you hadn't watched the series in a while and you forgot who Andre was, or like, well, after he completes his arc, he's pretty much forgettable. But like, his appearance in the movie didn't really make sense or come off as great or anything like that. So I just felt like he deserved a little bit more screen time slash like making his death a little bit more grandiose. It felt like it could have been an episode where like they were trying to stop the L ship from getting to Earth, and then by the very end, Andre figures it out and he sacrificed himself. So it felt like that, but in the movie, it was less than 30 seconds. So yeah, that was the one thing. Granted, I'm not sad that he died because I hated him, but I just still felt like he deserved more screen time, deserved to develop more or show more as a character since we grew with him in the series. That's my thoughts on that. The other character was Graham Acre. He was someone who was very prevalent throughout the entire series. It was depending on how you perceive him, a likable character for the most part too, of that very extreme. Fitting in with that warmonger trope, but it wasn't so much as a warmonger as much as a challenger, right? Like a bloodthirsty Trace Cushionata. But Graham's death, while it was a good sacrifice, a heroic sacrifice, just like Andre in a sense too, it was one of those blinky miss it kind of moments. And though he did get definitely more screen time than Andre, I felt like we could have paid a little bit more attention to Graham Acre and his development. I just felt bad that like his death was very, very quick and didn't hold too much of a significance. It's what I would say is it's a real life kind of death. Both of them had like real life kind of deaths where if someone was to die, you're not gonna imagine about all these like, oh my god, I flashback and I remember about this person. No. You're gonna react to the situation. So like Graham dies, not even a brief moment of like a lapse and like, oh my gosh, what had happened? And it's just Setsuna and Tyria going into the L's ship. So that's pretty much it. I didn't want to see him go, but it was a useful, sacrificial, heroic death. The last one I want to talk about is the ending of this series. I know a lot of people get a little bit butthurt about the end of this movie. I actually liked it. I found it very poignant too. What I'm talking about is how the movie ends, like where all of a sudden Setsuna and Tyria take a like hyperdrive or whatever, or warp into the L's home world or whatnot. And then all of a sudden the planet, this L's planet, turns into a giant flower. Sorry about that, folks. So I just thought it was kind of a shame that people got upset about that because it's really poignant. The L's a lot of people were frustrated with that ending because it's like, oh, it was so abrupt. We didn't get more out of it. We didn't get a real epilogue. That's the one thing I will ever argue with people, and I will agree with them, is that, yes, we didn't get a true epilogue. But I think that whole turning into a flower was so much more significant than most people shrug it off to be, because the whole series has been about communication and developing these communications. And throughout the entire movie, we know that the elves can't communicate the way that humans would normally communicate. And it seems like they can communicate through like picture imagery and stuff like that. So the only way that they could have done it, or simplify peace, at least with the humans and the elves, was a flower. Like, flowers is peaceful and that kind of thing. That symbolism, that imagery was enough to convey what words could not, right? A simple image. And just like that, an image is worth 1,000 words, and words are what we needed to communicate at that point. So I thought that was kind of poignant right there. I just didn't like how we didn't get an epilogue at all. It frustrated me because 00, the series does not end with an epilogue. It ends off with, like, this coming up summer, the movie, Awakening of the Trip. And not like that, like, but, you know, they just a quick little, like, teaser header, and that's about it. And I was like, really? That's all we get for an ending? I want to know what happened to the crew of the Tolominos. I want to know what happens to the 4 Gundamizers. What about Setsuna? Does he ever get what felt? It didn't seem like they would, but I don't know. Or no, sorry, that was at the end of this movie. But like, what happened with all of our characters? We grew with these characters. I want to see what happens in the end for them, not just an abrupt cut and a something of, yay, we win. I wanted to see something. So 00 does do this, or sorry, Awakening does do this with having like a 2-minute epilogue kind of a thing, and like we go, it's like past, present, future, almost like where we go into the past and we see Aeolia Shinberg talking to like EA Ray, which is like what was the basis for the ribbons type Innovate. And then later on, we fast forward more into the future. So 60 years, was it 60 years or 50 years? I can't remember. Yeah, 50 years is what I have. 50 years into the future of after the events of Awakening. And we kind of see like some things, but really what we get is a closure of, and this is the closure I didn't really care about, but it's one of those, I get some closure and it's better than no closure, right? And it's closure between Setsuna and Marina. Marina is old and potentially blind, and Setsuna comes back in his forever eternal form, metalized by the L's, so he's like a metal version of himself. And they finally like, oh, we understand each other. And that was pretty much the ending. And I was like, this is it. 50 episodes, 3 compilation movies, and a very tightly packed in 2-hour movie. And we couldn't really get 5 minutes of epilogue amongst our entire cast of characters. So I was really, really frustrated about that. But I'm like, we got an ending at least. We got an epilogue. And here we are again with Marina, character I didn't really cared for. She was done since the first season. They bring her back constantly. They're not in a relationship, but I guess they're in a relationship. I don't know. And I didn't care enough, and it's over. I really wanted to see what happened with everybody else. I really wanted to know what happened, other than they all die, because we all know all the characters are going to die, but I wanted to know what happened to Lock On, what happened to Miss Sumeragi, whatever happened to Alleluia and Maria, what happened to our characters. Okay, hold on. We do technically get what happened to Tyria, because he shows up an innovated body, I believe, but he's Veda now, so he's gonna be around forever. That's it. I got nothing else for that one there. I feel like that's a letdown, and I feel like that's a big, like, oh man, it sounds like Briston doesn't really like this movie. Don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed this movie. It's just that it was a letdown for the series overall. But other than that, I do want to get to my next segment here, and I want to talk about my favorite suits of the movie. For those who are not in the know here, with this segment here, with every single Gundam movie or series that gets introduced into the Gundam franchise, we are introduced to a whole new slew of suits, redesigns, battleships, those sort of things. Double O, the movie, though, doesn't really offer a whole lot of new, though. Mostly because this is a sequel movie, we're seeing a lot of familiar suits, but most of the things that we do see here are a lot of upgrades. Ooh, easy. So we do get some upgrades here that they're okay for the most part. I only a couple of suits from this entire series, and I'm sorry that the tabs are kind of giving it away. Oh wait, you can't really see it because of spoiler. Yes, unintentional blockage, but I didn't really care for a lot of the suits because they're the same suit designs that we see for the most part. Just of course, all the Gundams get upgrades, which are cool. But the first Gundam that I really like, and no spoiler, it is spoilers. I liked only the Gundams from this movie, but I like Gundam Zabanya. I thought it was really, really cool with all of its armaments and how those things acted like just like the funnels, it like the bits it was in the series, but it had more armaments. It did a lot more and carried out more than it could previously. It felt like a miniature powerhouse of its own, and it was a really cool suit to watch in action. I really enjoyed it a lot. I can't really say a whole lot about it. It's not much for me to really bring up. And of course, ever so briefly, I mean, I always thought that for the longest time the new Gundam was a shame because we don't get to see the new Gundam really perform as much. Same thing with the Zazavi. But if you want to talk about movie shame and it's a cool looking suit, look none other than the Double O Quant. The Double O Quant is a very cool looking suit. Its functionalities too, while short lived that we got to see that it do, was really cool itself too. Unfortunately, we got like less than what? I want to say 5 minutes, but it feels like in between 5 to 10 minutes of seeing this suit in action. And that's not a whole lot. But it very much reminds me a lot of Exia Gundam, tied in with some little fun features with like the funnel bits or something like that, and like some of the weapons. It got really weird when it was quantizing or like quantizing to warp to the L's homeworld, and it looked like that. But that's just because it's prepping itself for the transfer. And then when it comes back, we only see this, like, not even a second, because we see this briefly and then it gets flowerized. Let me see if I have it in here. I think it's in one of my Gundam things. Yes, here we go. I mean, like, this is the best one I can show. And let me bring this up for you guys. Oh no, the AGE folder is coming out. The Gundam. Let me see if I can get it to focus. Focus. There we go. The Gundam flowerizes. It turns into a bunch of flowers at the very end of the movie, just like it did in like in the ending credits. Basically, we see it like. Yep, that's pretty much it. So it's kind of sad we see the quant just turn into flowers. Or flowerize, at least. But it was a cool suit. I liked it. Wish we could see more of it. But that's all I had to say about the suits from the Awakening of the Trailblazer movie, because there isn't a whole lot. Let me go ahead and alert our viewers here. We are no longer talking about spoilers. So, next thing I want to talk about, like I mentioned already, is I want to talk about one of our other segments here, which is, I'm new to the Gundam franchise. Should I watch this movie first? If you can't already tell, I'll say it flat out. No, do not watch this movie first if this is the first time you're watching a Gundam movie. This is a sequel movie to a series that goes at the pace of a compilation movie. Yeah, you're gonna be able to still enjoy it because it's very actiony and it has some spooky moments, like creepy spooky moments. But a lot of what's going on might not make a whole lot of sense, and it's gonna set a very, very bad expectation about the Gundam franchise. So definitely do not start with this first. If you want to watch this one, definitely watch 00 first, then watch the movies, because that's how it should be done. But yeah. It's not something I would recommend you to watch first off. Not for your first foray into Gundam, no. But definitely check it out later on. It's a fun movie. Speaking of that being a fun movie, so for the overall, Awakening of the Trailblazer is a wild and fun ride that finally delivers on 00's promise of the dialogues to come. Though the movie does suffer through incredibly fast pace and cuts akin to a compilation movie, it manages to keep the overarching story and the characters in line with the incredibly intense and fast-paced action sequences. This is definitely a movie not to miss, since it does complete the story for Gundam 00 and is a fun, watchable movie. That said, Mobile Suit Gundam 00, Awakening of the Trailblazer, gets a 4 out of 5. Again, Awakening of the Trailblazer is a very fun movie. I can't talk about how much I enjoyed it a lot, even though like a lot of my review was kind of trashing on it a bit. It's just because I really want to harp on some of the bigger parts, because honestly, the first hour and 20 minutes of this movie is mostly set up, and we get the actiony portions throughout it. We get that weird like horror movie moment for like 10 minutes of that. And then once the L's start coming around and all that stuff like that, that's where things just flip around and it becomes super actiony and crazy. That 40 minutes does not feel like 40 minutes, and it's just a fun ride overall. Cannot hype up the movie any more further than that. That being said, too, this is going to be the end of our review. I do appreciate you guys for sticking around for this very, very long review, like some of my other recent ones, too. But if you haven't already, if you are watching this on Twitch, make sure to follow me on my Twitch account here. You're watching this on YouTube, like the video, subscribe to my channel, leave a comment down below. I want to hear from you guys. What did you think about Gundam 00 overall? Did you like the series? Did you not? What about the compilation movies? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Did you think they were absolute garbage too? Or not absolute garbage, but pretty trashy themselves? And what about the 00 movie, Awakening of the Trailblazer? Did you guys like it like I did? Did you have more complaints than I did? Did you not agree with how I saw certain things, especially like, you know, the ending or anything like that? I want to hear from you guys. Leave a comment down below. That said, I do want to thank you guys again for watching this live stream review. And until the next one, I will see you next time. Take care. Alright guys, now this is not the end of the stream here. We got one more review to do. Kind of two more actually. I'm going to try to make this one a little bit faster because 00 had a lot more to cover. I will be covering AGE. I don't think I have a whole lot to talk about AGE. So here we go. Without further ado. Let me just get that fixed. I need to get that fixed up first. Oh boy. Hey there, and welcome to another Nerdy Reviews. My name is the Absolute Nerd. That's not tight. Hey there, and welcome to another Nerdy Reviews. I'm the Absolute Nerd, but you can just call me Briston. And today, we're going to be reviewing Mobile Suit Gundam AGE. Now, before I start with anything here, if you're watching this on Twitch, make sure to follow me on my Twitch account here. If you're watching this on YouTube, like the video, subscribe to my channel, leave a comment down below. I want to hear from you guys. Did you like this series? Did you not like the series? What about the Memory of Eden movies? Did you like them or not like them? I don't know. I want to hear from you guys. Do you think this is like a Double Zeta Gundam? Again, leave a comment down below. I want to hear from you guys. That said, let's go ahead and start off with the review here. Just like how I always like to start off things, let's just talk about real briefly about the story. And it's kind of hard to describe this series story-wise, so I'm just going to give you the most bare bones of itself here. So Gundam, Mobile Suit Gundam AGE, we follow the Asuno family here through 3 different generations and their involvement in a war between the Earth and the UE, or the Unknown Enemy. That is the very base level of this series, and each story follows our 3 young men right here in different of the different generations. This is a 49 episode series that originally aired on October 9th of 2011 in Japan, and it was a series created by Level 5 after they were originally hired by Sunrise to create a Gundam game. And I believe this is the director here, Akihiro Hino, pitched a plot summary for a Gundam anime. As you can tell, the rest is history in that we get a series that's very different from most Gundam series we've seen to date in the Gundam franchise. Now, and I just want to also tell you guys this too, if some of the animation might look a little bit familiar to you too as well, and if you're not familiar with the name Level 5, you might be familiar with them if you are a gamer, particularly of like a subset of games. Level 5 is a game developing company that created games such as the Professor Layton games and the Yokai Watch games. So if you've ever played or heard of those games, you're going to be familiar with them because they're the ones that created this series. Very unique. Now, one thing I do want to talk about with Gundam AGE, and this is critiquing of the series itself. Now, oftentimes, before I got into this series, I didn't watch it until I got the Blu-rays that came out a few years ago from Right Stuff. But when this series was coming out, I know this series got a lot of criticism and a lot of hate because they always akin this series to the Double Zeta Gundam. They were saying it's too childish, too kiddish, really, really bad in the story, those sort of things. So when I first time came across this series, I was very reluctant. I was very uneasy to watch it because I had already watched Double Zeta Gundam, and I'm about to watch this, and I was like, please God, no, I don't want to watch something that's absolutely awful and terrible. I'm going to tell you right now, spoilers in itself, it's not terrible, and it's not like Double Zeta Gundam. Now, I won't say completely at all, there is aspects, and I'll talk about that later too. But I would definitely say though, I can kind of understand the hate for this series, but at the same time, I just don't agree with it. But let me just dive in some basic things here I want to highlight. Starting off here was the animation of this series. The animation for Gundam AGE is really, really nice. I like a lot of the soft character designs and textures in it as well. A lot of the coloring is, again, you can see it like the softer coloring on it. Lighter, it's actually lighter on the inking for the characters. So I'm like, for some odd reason, I always like harder inking, but with this animation and the character designs, it really works out very well and makes it very, like light anime-ish. And it kind of fits in tone with like some of the stories it perceives in this series. Unique and wonderful in my opinion. I really like it. The music in this series is solid and great. I really love a lot of the music in this series, particularly the first opening and the end opening of AGE. Probably one of the best opening and ending theme songs in the Gundam franchise. Like right up there with like Wing and Seed music. Really love it. Other than that, the inner music that's used like during dialogues, action sequences, or during story moments. Great music too. Really creates a nice atmosphere and keeps you in tow with what's going on. Sorry about that. As for voice acting though, alright, so the English dub for this series is pretty bad. Pretty bad. Some of the worst I've heard in a while, and like this is one of those cases where I go like, yeah, if you want to hear bad dubbing, this is a really good example of bad dubbing. A lot of the characters just don't fit. Like a lot of the voice actors and actresses, not that they're bad or anything like that, it's just they don't fit the characters that they voice for. Particularly the younger versions of Emily and DK in Flint's storyline. I did not like their voices at all. Did not fit the characters at all. And then when you listen to them in Japanese, because when I will be reviewing later on here, The Memory of Eden, which is only in Japanese and subtitled in English, the Japanese voice actors and actresses sound fantastic and fit more with their characters, or more in tone with their characters. I think the only character I didn't really like as much voicing in the Japanese was Flint when he's grown up. As an adult and as his as an older person, so like through Asuno's arc as the father, and then as Kyo's arc as him being grandpa. I didn't like his Japanese voice actor. I love his English voice actor in as grandpa basically. And the English one, he's okay as Flint. I think the Japanese one is much better, but it's okay. But honestly, a lot of the voice acting for English was I would say is miscasted. I didn't like a lot of them. Didn't fit well with these characters. Other than that, Gundam AGE is a very, very unique Gundam series, and I would say that all around. The first and most noticeable unique thing about Gundam AGE is that it's a story that's told in 3 different generations. So it's broken up into 3 arcs, technically, and not really too much of a spoiler. There are 4 arcs total, but we follow our first arc, which is Flint's arc. We follow a second arc, which is Asimu, his son. And then we follow Kyo in the third, not so final arc, who's the son of Asimu and grandson to Flint. I really like how they utilize this generational gap within the series and the utilization of time skips. Now, time skips is not unfamiliar with the Gundam franchise. We've seen them either between series, where they make a sequel series or a sequel movie, or like with my last review with Gundam 00, where we have like inner cuts where we would have like a nice noticeable time gap that's made reference to itself, or like between the first and 2 seasons. Unlike 00 though, AGE is not season based, and a lot of the time skips are within their arc. So when one arc ends, it kind of merges off to the other. Kind of feels like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure at times for me with these time skips. They are very, very deliberate in telling you the time skips, which are really, really nice. And it gives you a nice frame of time in mind, basically. The other thing I really liked a lot about these time skips is the development of our characters. Very unique to something that we don't get to see often enough in the Gundam franchise, because a lot of times we see our characters, some of the characters we do get to grow with, but we don't get to see them develop over time or anything like that. And while the growth in times, differ, like I think with Flint being the most, not dynamic, but the most developed of the three characters, because we see him develop through 3 different arcs. We see Asimo develop through 2 arcs, and then we only see Kyo for his only arc, basically. But I really like how we see them in each generation and how they perceive or behave from that point. Just how we grow up in general. We're not going to be the same people, we're not going to be the same person like 10 years ago or 20 years ago, 30, 40 or so. And I think that's really fascinating and interesting, like a character study in a sense of observing these characters and all the other characters, like the crew of the Diva and so forth. So I thought that was kind of cool. The only thing I would say that is a waste, though, and not too much of a spoilers, is that while characters transitioned over from Flint's arc to Asimo's arc, basically, characters don't really transition over to Kyo's arc. So most of the characters that we are familiar with by Flint's arc disappear within Asimo's arc. By Kyo's arc, the only really returning characters are mostly the Asimo family, like not just Asimo and Flint, but of course, like other family members like Emily or Emily, his wife, or Asimo's wife, Rosemary. Kind of spoilers, not really spoilers, because I mean, obviously, we kind of get these characters for the fact of the matter. That's how we have a family, right? But I mean, it's kind of a disappointment here. By the time we get to here, I wish we had more characters from Asimo's timeline really show up here. Characters like Arisa or like other helmsmen or characters within the Diva itself. We don't really see that there. Not too much of a spoiler right there, but I just want to set expectations, because by the time, and that's what a lot of people tend to complain about this series, is the writing itself. Personally, I really like Flint's story, and let me put it this way too. What makes Age another unique aspect too is that each story is a different anime archetype or a different type of anime genre told. That's super really cool about Age. So Flint's story is very much like a shonen based story. It has a lot of heart. A lot of it is shonen heart, not like shonen fighting or whatnot, but a shonen heart behind that, his storyline. Very familiarized. It's very energetic, and I can see where a lot of people now might not like this part of the series because it's very kid based almost. It's like in tune that kind of reminds me of like of course younger protagonists. Asimu's arc is very much like a teenager's storyline in anime. It's very melodramatic, adds a lot of flair. I would almost say it harkens back to Gundam Seed at points too, with the whole Asimu and Z-Heart, who is the antagonist of that story. And it very much reminds me of like Kira and Atherin at times. So I think that was kind of a nice little parallel and a shift in the story. When we get to Kyo's story, though, it feels more like a traditional Gundam story at points, but it's kind of an amalgamation of what we know traditionally of Gundam, of the shonen heart from Flint's story, and then the melodrama from Asimu's story, all rolled and packaged into one for Kyo. So I thought that was kind of unique. However, that's where the problems also come into play. You see, with Flint and Asimu's story, I find that the writing for their stories are very nicely written. They're packaged very well. I mean, there's some things that could be adjusted here and there, be it the characters or the events that lay out in the story itself. Most of the complaints that I've ever understood online or from people is regarding Kyo's story. And that can go from our missing characters when we transition over from Asimo's to Kyo's story. We're missing out not only on stories, but a lot of people don't like Kyo themselves. If you've watched my 00 review, you'll know that I don't like pacifistic characters, and Kyo fits within that realm too. Just not as preachy about it, but I can see why people don't like Kyo and how his inactions can get others killed. or harmed or cause more issues, to even more so, and this is the bigger critical one I find, is the story itself. So when we transition over, we have another time skip, and there's less sensical about story, certain character motivations or motives, complete 180 change on characters like moralities or mentality. So it's just a little bit frustrating. I can mention character names such as Fram, Zeehart, Ezelkant, and Flint himself. So these are just little things here. Not too much of a spoiler, but just throwing it out there. Like, people who have complained in the past about, like, these characters now no longer make sense. They no longer represent who they were, or, like, the rating got really choppy and bad and clunky. I'm not going to disagree necessarily to that one there, but I feel like it's not without fault. I think even though with Kyo's arc, which is a bigger chunk of the Kyo's arc, which is the third one, and then there's a fourth and final one, I still find that overall the series is still a pretty solid series overall, and I enjoyed it a lot. But I do understand, and I get the complaints here. It's kind of funny too. I want to mention this as well. I used to hate Asimu's arc the most. I want to harken back to my Seed and Sea Destiny reviews, where I don't really like melodrama a lot. And some people go like, well, that's what the Gundam franchise is. I'm like, not exactly. The Gundam franchise melodrama is military melodrama / like things that are going inner character wise, what's going on throughout the war. Seed and Sea Destiny brought in what I like to call high school drama, which I don't care for at all. I never liked high school, and I never cared for high school drama. That's where that kind of melodrama comes into play, and that's very much focused within Seed and Sea Destiny. That is brought back here with Asimu's story, and it takes place in high school, for all things. The problem, though, is that first time I had to watch it, I really didn't like it. Second time watching it now, again, this is my second time watching AGE. I was excited to rewatch this series. I actually didn't find it that bad. I actually got to enjoy it a little bit more and digress a lot more. Maybe it's just a change in times. Again, just like AGE itself and how the characters change throughout the ages, my opinions have changed as well. Again, I've only watched this series, I feel like 4 or 5 years ago, depending on whenever this was originally released by Right Stuff. That's when I had originally watched it. I think it was like 2006 is what I think, or 2017. I can't remember. But point being, though, is that I didn't like him at first, and I didn't like his story overall. After a second rewatch, I actually didn't find it that bad, and I enjoyed it. The melodrama didn't grit on me as much. Other than that, even though the story can get a little bit clunky here with Kyo, I feel that the story and pacing overall for this entire series is pretty solid. From Flint's story arc to Asima's story arc, everything pretty much flowed very, very well. It gets clunky with Kyo, and I keep mentioning about Kyo because we have a steady stream of like what we are expecting from a story, building with our characters and the world around them too. By Kyo's time frame, what causes, again, the clunkiness is between character motives and some of the 180 flips for some of our characters, not having a real clear-cut idea of where we're trying to head towards the end, right? And it kind of felt rushed at times. So it just got a little bit weird and wonky with Kyo's story. And very much so, just like some other Gundam series and movies as well, the action is what really carried Kyo's story. Other than that, that's pretty much what I had to say non-spoiler wise. So I do have a warning for you guys. I want to talk about some spoilers regarding this series here. So you might want to skip a little bit ahead to the I'm new to the Gundam franchise. Should I watch this first? So look out for that banner disappearing. But let's go ahead and begin with the spoilers here. Like I mentioned about my favorite, like, of my three here, I really enjoyed Flint's story the most. And as I mentioned with the story, we do follow the three Asuno men in this series. What's obviously argued is that like each story is about these characters. I argue though, is that Flint is our main character throughout the entire series. I say this because even though as a father and a grandpa, basically, he is involved with these two right there, and he has influences over the both of them. But he plays very pivotal and very key to a lot of moments, and we do see him change through each arc. And I find it very fascinating and very interesting with Flint himself, like how he went from, like someone who has some level of hope and wanting to protect others, and it made him a much more colder, sterner person, that made him distant from his family and created a rift with his own son. And then when we see that he comes back with Kyo, and he's wanting to shape Kyo to be the defender that Asimo could not be, but at the same time he's become a little bit more lenient until we get later on in the series, which is what I was talking about, a little bit of that 180 flip. I think it's kind of funny though, because like by the end of the series, like everything was all about Flint. He was everywhere and influenced so much of what's going on in the series. So I really feel that Flint was more of a main character than our other two in the series. Yes, they are overall main characters, but Flint really takes it on. I know another complaint that people had about the series is at the very end of the series, when they were complaining about like Flint wouldn't just do a 180 flip just because he saw a ghost of Urine. I can never get over her English, like how they pronounce her name in English, and I don't recall that in Japanese. They didn't really say it as much, but her name is Urine. That's Yurin, but it's pronounced urine, like your pee. It's hard. But I want to get to my point here. Some people, like a lot of people I've read about or like hear from who criticize Age, say that they didn't like how he would just flip the switch, go like from like so hell-bent on killing all vegan and stuff like that to, you know what, maybe they're not all that bad of a people or stuff like that. And here's where I argue that makes sense. Because Flint, his initial reaction in fighting in the Federation has and always had been about protecting others. He couldn't protect his mother. He lost his mother because of the vegan attack on the colony. I forgot the name. I know it's the day Angel fell. I think that the colony was called Angel, but I think it was called something else. I could swear it was called something else. So after that, and then the attack on the newer colony that he lived in there, and him meeting Urine, really, really influenced him, because the next time that he meets Urine, which was on this other colony, and then they were devising the plan to attack the asteroid that was holding a vegan stronghold. His attachment towards Urine was so much. It was like Emily was like the fall kind of character. She was almost tossable for Flint, but she had such a huge impact on him. And when Decille used her in the manner that he could not save or protect her, and then she died, he blamed himself for not being able to not only protect the people around him, but the people that he cared the most about. And as much as like some people want to argue that it's like oh, it's a bad writing, I'm like, no, him seeing her ghost again and having that final resolve, because all these years he blamed himself for not being able to protect her, and that's why he's so stern with Asimo, trying to make him into the right soldier, to gear him in that way. And it caused Asimo to resent his father and not being able to live up to not only his father's expectations, but to surpass his own father, because he's an X-Rounder and Asimo was not. And then it goes even furthermore with Kyo too, because like he wants to protect him. And then earlier on in Kyo's arc, he gets captured and he couldn't do anything. And then he just snaps and goes like hellbent, like I'm gonna do whatever I want. I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna kill every vegan. And it was just so much so like he's driven to protect the people around him that's alive, but the one that's still stuck out, and it's like, you know, it's like a tragic memory that anybody has. Like anybody who has like, you know, just a general tragic memory, it sticks with you. It forms who you are. And it's not often in our lives that we come across a tragic event, that same tragic event that forms us in the way that we are, or reminds us of things, and we get to confront that again in the same similar fashion or mode. And that's something that's unique within the Gundam series when we get those, like, you know, new type moments or ghost moments, whatever you want to call it, that's not in the UC century, right? And we get this ghost moment where he talks to Urine one last time, and he's able to confront his own inner demon, his own inner issues of not being able to save someone he loved, and finally being able to let go. And in a sense, you can also look at it too, like, she was a vegan herself too. So he was just coming to that terms, coming to that acceptance, coming to, hey, you know what? I'm wrong here, and I've been going about this the wrong way. And maybe it's time for me to change. And, you know, right now, at the most pinnacle moment here, this can alter everything. Maybe I should try and do something different. He's done the same thing for over what? I think he's like 50 or 60 by Kyo's arc, because he's like 10ish or 13 in this part right here. He's like in his 30s, 25 years past, and he's in his 30s. He's like 55 to 60 by Kyo's arc, if I'm remembering the timelines here. He's done the exact same thing for so long. At that point, I mean, it kind of makes sense that he stops what he's doing, stop being so vindictive, and then being told by the one person that he loves, the one person he needs to hear something from, that he hasn't heard from decades because she's dead, to let it go. Let all the anger and hatred go. So I think, and as much as people kind of find that like, oh, it's just the writing and stuff like that, if you take all of that into context, if you take that all in together and put it within the character study of Flint himself, I think it's so poignant and so on spot that at that moment, it's reasonable within his character that he was going to change. That's my 2 cents on with Flint. And I really like that whole dynamic and change, seeing him develop and see how he has interactions with his family line, and, you know, passing on negatively and even positively at times too, passing on some of his things. So, but that's what I saw from that aspect. My buddy wants to leave my lap. Another one I want to talk about is Z-Heart. Z-Heart is, of course, those of you in the spoiler section, you're aware about this, but he's in Asima's arc and then later on in Kyo's arc. Ooh, excuse me. Sorry about that, guys. But yeah, so the next person I'm going to talk about is Z-Heart. He is in Asima's arc, obviously, main portion, and then, of course, in Kyo's arc as well. Z-Heart's like a mixed bag for me. He's like a pseudo-char, and then, like, throughout this arc right here, he's like trying to, like, he's like learning to become human in a sense, and then he's not, and there's the conflict between him and Asimu and stuff like that. So I thought that was kind of really nice. Reminds me a lot between Kira and Atherin. And that was all fine and dandy, right? Once we got to Kyo's arc, though, that's where we get a lot of problems, a lot of issues with him. He becomes a very contradictory character, even learning about Izokant's real motives about Project Eden. And he kind of like does a weird like 180 and goes like super like hellbent into completing this thing here, even sacking people like Fram. And I thought it was also sad for Fram's character too, because she's the kind of character that, like, she's like, oh, I don't know why my brother sacrificed his life for you. And the way I saw is like, he sacrificed his life for Z-Heart at the end of the second of Asimu's storyline, because he was a man that was going to be hellbent on completing the intention, the goal, the vegan mission, right? And even though it's kind of weird, because like she's another character that turns 180. She goes like from like, I'm gonna kill him if he's like an extremist or some jazz like that, and then she all of a sudden becomes like super enamored with him and super longing to be with Z-Heart and wanting to do every single thing that, you know, when he asks her to sack her life, she does it even though, and it's kind of funny though. The series does this really mean thing to her, where it's like I view you, like Z-Heart's like, I view you as a very valuable subordinate, and she, like, after she leaves the room, she's like, oh my god, he only, like, I like, she wants to say I love him, but he only views me as a subordinate, and that's the best I'll ever get, and I'll move on with that. And I'm like, really? But it's kind of weird because, like, we get the whole idea, like, the emotionalism between the Vegan and how they're kind of like Vulcans from Star Trek almost, where they disassociate themselves from emotion and void themselves of emotion, but yet they can't help but be emotional themselves at times too. So there's a lot of weird writings here and contradictories amongst the characters, and then regarding Vegan emotions and stuff like that. But I felt it was a shame with Z-Heart and how he was like so much that he wants to do this, finding out the real motives, and then he still goes along with it. I'll talk about this later on too, but when we get to Memory of Eden, I really like how they retell and re-explain that and make more sense out of it. Now, other than that, I just think it was just a shame Z-Heart was a wannabe Char in a sense, and they did a really poor job of portraying him in the third and final arc for Kyo. Speaking of Kyo too, I don't. When I first watched this, he was very, very aggravating for me. Now, not so much as aggravating. I think what's just aggravating about him is that his fighting style is very pacifistic. He's trying not to kill people and stuff like that. Yet when it comes to other people dying, he doesn't really do anything about it. The scene, like the biggest offender too, was Gerard Spurgard. If I'm saying her name correctly here, it's kind of hard to say it. And he has the power to end the fight and kill her, and he could not. And it's up to Flint to land a killing shot on her, and yet she is killing and going crazy with everybody. It's just frustrating with the characters that have all this power and then whine about not wanting to kill and stuff like that. I get it. It's the whole, with great power comes with great responsibility, but at the same time too, if you are trying to fight for pacifism and not wanting people to get killed, yet not willing to do anything to protect the others that you are saying that should not be killing too, and they get killed, well, then are you a hypocrite yourself? You know, like, you are letting people die instead of protecting people. And instead of protecting people that you should be protecting, you're protecting the people that are the attackers, the killers. It's a backwards thinking, in my opinion, here. And I'm like, well, if you're going to protect them, you need to protect the people you're trying to protect too. Okay? This whole I don't want people to die thing makes sense. Look, I'm a pacifist myself too, but the ideology to get behind that mentality is really, really stupid. I want to protect my attackers, but I'm not going to save the people who I'm trying to protect. That's very frustrating. I can get behind a lot of people when they get frustrated with Kyo about that, and I'm right there with you too. The only thing that I don't get as frustrated with Kyo is that he's not super preachy about it, and he tries to save the people, not by a whole lot, but he tries, so I'm going to give him that. It's not like he's really in a peacecraft and preaches and prances about with pacifism while doing absolutely nothing to protect the people or anything like that. Though Relina does try to utilize her political power to shift the tides of power and gear more people towards pacifism. So that's something on her end. Or maybe I can go back to Saji from Gundam 00, and where he's not trying to blame others or blame anybody else for the misgivings of what happened. So I mean, there's different aspects. He's another one of those pacifistic characters in the Gundam franchise that just grits on my nerves. I'm glad that other people see that too, but he's not as terrible as other people portray him to be, though. That's my thoughts on that. That's all I really want to say regarding Gundam 00 itself, but I do have suits I want to talk about, or my favorite suits of the series. If you're not familiar with this segment here, this is basically, and just to capitalize, right? Oh, excuse me. Sorry. I need to make sure. It's like been a little bit of time here too, so I'm like, oh my lord. I was trying to intend this to be a 2-hour stream. It's going on to 2 hours and 44 minutes, but I am almost done here, so that's a positive way of looking at all of this. Anyways. So if you're not familiar with this segment here, with every single Gundam series that's introduced into the Gundam franchise, the series introduced a whole new slew of suits, be it new suits, new designs or redesigns, battleships, those sort of things. Gundam AGE is no different from this. In fact, they introduced a whole new slew of suits. Some of them are very reminiscing to the like Universal Sentry suits and all that. However, there's a neat little twist, and that's actually the enemy suits. So I love a lot of the designs for these suits here. I have a couple of honorable mentions, but I'm going to tell you this right now. I am in absolute love and enamorment with the Yui or Vegan suits. Absolutely love them. I love from the designs to the weapons to the sound effects that they make with their eyes. I love my Zaku like mono eye sound, but the sound that they make when their eyes are like turned on or what is super cool. I really love a lot of the vegan suits. But before I gush about them, let me just go ahead and bring about some honorable mentions. First honorable mention is the Clanch suits. I have the Clanch custom up here. It's not that it's a bad like I don't know, something about the design about it. It's so like weird, blocky and cool. Not like a true GM base, but it has that screen face that it's not like it's smooth but blocky, right? And of course, I cannot not talk about suits that transform, because I love my transforming mobile suits. So I love that it's a transformable type. It's pretty cool. It's very reminiscent of the AGE 2 and how it utilizes the weapon on the face level when it transforms. But other than that, this is an honorable mention. It's not one of my favorites. Same thing with the Adele. The Adeles, which are very similar to the Clanch type, I just like its simplistic form. It's got, again, a lot of these blocky textures and blocky details. The face is really cool. It's got this like really nice like face helmet guard. Reminds me of like Halo ODST kind of suits, or like the helmets. I like that a lot. It's really cool looking. For some odd reason, again, it's not like a GM. It has a personality behind that face, like on the face itself. I really like it a lot. The last but not least is the Genoese. I picked the Genoese 2 in particular because I like the later versions of the suit. But even the first form of the suit, I don't really mind it at all. The Genoese is a really cool looking base level, like GM inspired suit. Super basic, super like detailed in itself too. Again, with the helmet, it's got a lot of detail behind it, a lot of characteristic to it. I like it a lot. But these are just honorable mention suits for me. I really do like them a lot. But if we're going to talk about suits I love, or my favorite from this series, let's start off with the Gundams, because actually the Gundams are some of my favorites too. I really like the AGE 1 normal type. Such a basic design, reminiscing of the original Gundam. But I just really love its base level design. It does get some of the other upgradable parts, I don't care about those as much. Sorry about that, folks. But I don't care about them as much. I really just love the base level of the suit itself. Other than that, the AGE FX. This is actually AGE 3, but they just upgraded that this is the final form of the AGE 3. It's a really cool suit. Unfortunately, it's used by Kyo, of all people, so it's a very pacifistic suit. Very, very pacifistic. It's a shame, is what I have to say, because it utilizes a lot of I think they call it the bits, but I like to call them funnels. What do they call it? It is funnels, sea funnels. There we go. He utilizes the funnels to disable a lot of the vegan suits. He seldomly uses his blaster, often using like the beam sabers that are in the hilts or the arm braces, which are really, really cool. I love the overall design and utilization of this suit. It's just a shame that we don't get to see really, really powerhouse. One thing I wanted to talk about before I jump into my favorite suits too, is something that's very unique to this series. Let me see if I can find age 2 normal. Here we go. And age 3. The fun things about these suits here is that it pays a lot of homage to the first 3 Gundam series of the Universal Century. By this, I mean, if you look at it with the 3 ages, with the 3 generation types, right? We see that with Flint's age, we have the original Gundam, right? Very base level. The only thing that's going to be different between the original Gundam and age 1 is that there's no core fighter, right? But they utilize some other things, some gimmicky things. That's what I like to put it, right? Instead of the G armor, we get the age system, so it switches out armaments and stuff like that. So it's very much like that. When we come to age 2, though, it's very much with Asimu's story, and because he is a teenager himself too, it's very similar to, like, not similar, but akin to like Camille's story almost, or Camille's suit at least. Just like in Zeta Gundam, we are introduced to transformable mobile suits, and that's what we get here. The main Gundam is transformable into a fighter type. It's really cool how we kind of got those, like, little bit of those parallels going. The last parallel I want to show you guys is the age 3. This one's kind of big and obvious too, but it's very reminiscent of the Double Zeta Gundam, and it kind of goes alongside with Kyo's story, him being young again too, and another kid, but it looks very similar to the Zeta Gundam from the I think it was the Sig Axis or Sigmaxis rifle, which is a not buster level, but like a hyper mega particle cannon from the rifle itself. The beam sabers are huge and ginormous. You got these wing binders right here that are very similar to the ZZ Gundam. Let me try and see if I can pull up ZZ Gundam itself real fast so I can just show you guys what I'm talking about here, and kind of just showing you like these nice little parallels, and we'll get back to these guys as well. So again, we got the original Gundam, we got the Zeta Gundam, and then we got the Double Zeta Gundam. And while we're at that too, let's just go back here and let's just pull up. So we got the age 1, right? So here's our age 1 in comparison to the original Gundam. In fact, let me just do this so we can make it a little bit more easier for you guys. It's hard for me to see though. Oh no, I think he's over here. Oh, okay, well. I'm trying to see if I can. Oh, here we go. There we go. Age 1 and the original Gundam. Come on. There we go. As you can see right here, similar features in the color aspects. We got that blue body with the inner reddings, the feet. Again, similar aspects to the original Gundam. Now, let's go ahead and jump around to ZZ. Oh no, did I not? Oh wait, age. Let's see if I can get age 2. I apologize here. Where's my age 2? Oh no, I don't have my age 2. I apologize. I thought I had this whole organized. I don't have anything organized. Me organized? What are you talking about? I don't just plan any of this and get anything set up. What am I talking about? Okay, here we go. Apologize for that. So, with the age 2 and Zeta Gundam, while the colors are not exactly the same, because again, this is the age system, so it's going to look like the original age, but the transformables is still there. Not the same looking of the transformations, mind you, but transformable nonetheless. Lastly is the age 3. And age 3, as you can see what I'm talking about, like very similar with features of the ZZ Gundam. The other thing about the age 3, in particular, not from the age FX, but age 3, it utilizes a core fighter system. Very similar to the ZZ Gundam, where it has different core fighter modes. We also have a core fighter basis system for the age 3. So as you can see right there, like that, G Fortress, and then we got the top and bottom. So again, the suit designs for the AGE Gundam in particular, it pays a lot more homage and respect. I'm not gonna say outright copy because it's not like, you know, say Azaku Warrior or Goofik Knight or a Dom from Sea Destiny. Not an outright rip and just playing around with it. No, it's a brand new design Gundam, but having similar aspects or homages towards the original suit itself. So I just wanted to point that out there for you guys. Other than that, I want to talk about my favorite suits, right? So what I have here is I destroyed it again, and I apologize, and that's okay. But I really am enamored with a lot of these vegan mobile suits. Vegan suits are so cool looking. I love the design. Now, most of the designs of the vegan suits go mix between looking very dragon-esque and insect-like, and they kind of fuse them together to make these very unique mobile suits. We're gonna start off low, and we're gonna go off to my favorites. So it's kind of funny because we're starting off high. The Warza R, which is Z-Heart's suit, is very reminiscing. These are ground types though, but very reminiscing of the Zagox, because when we see these suits, not only they're in the desert, but we also see them in this jungle-like area, and the fighting was kind of similar to the attack on Jaburo in the original Gundam. But I love this suit for its mobility and utilization. And it's kind of hokey like this too, but it goes through the ground and it's really, really fast. It's kind of cool. Like a Tremor Gundam. My next favorite one here is the Zetas R. This is another one of Z-Heart's suits. One of his earlier ones. Decil also uses this one, but it's just called the Zetas. I just like the Zetas R because I like the little red accent, like not accents, but the little red more emotions right there. Of course, this is one of my favorite suits because it transforms. It's a very simplistic transformation, but I really love the design. I can't get over like these weird, like they're pointy yet like smooth, and they're jagged yet they're like rounded. Very, again, dragon-esque looking, but also insect-like at the same time too. It's like combining two things I like. I can't pronounce its name. I didn't even know its name because they don't really say it in the series. They said it maybe like once or twice, and it's passable. As a Giraga, really cool looking suit. It gets equipped with the X transmitters later on, so that way you Z-Heart can use these bits. It does not transform, but it has this weird little tail thing. It's very humanoid-esque looking. Reminds me of a Xenomorph from the Alien franchise too at points. Very cool looking to itself. The next one here is the Fanfarsia. Now there's the Farsia, which is, it's basically a similar design, but the Fanfarsia, I really like this one because it has the bits with the little flower baton it has. And it's cool because the baton acts as like a it has like a beam ribbon attack that it uses, and the funnel or the bit pieces can actually gather around and looks like a little bouquet and fire a mega cannon almost from there. I really love a lot of its effeminate features. Again, we don't get a whole lot of effeminate looking suits, but it's very effeminate looking, and just this like this hood, this petal-esque hood over her shoulders around the head basically. And we got the normalized vegan face for a lot of the suits. Love it. It's super like very cutesy but very formidable suit. I really, really like it. Also, if you haven't noticed as well, it's got a gem on the chest. What's up with me liking gems on the chests of suits? Oh wait, that's like a lot of the vegan suits too. It's not really gem, but like that kind of like gemish looking. My next one, this one's really, really high up there. I really like the Zadra. I'm kind of sad that this one doesn't get utilized as much, but it's a really cool suit. It has this really neat looking, is it the sword right here? Yeah, like the sword itself was kind of cool. I think it was actually on the previous suit, the Ghidra, where it has a spear and it can shoot from the spear and then separate and use it as an attack. I think it's so cool, but I love the overall design. Again, goes right back to that insect dragon looking suit. my next favorite one, these are all my favorites, by the way. I'm like, if I could find models of these suits, I would totally grab them. Now, these suits coming up, I found models for them. They're kind of pricey. I would like to get them though. I like the Gundam Legolas. It like a lot of people go, like, oh man, it's just a rip of the original Gundam and something. Like, yeah, it is, but you know what? It's the original Gundam looking like a vegan suit. It's got a lot of like, okay, humanoid Gundam look. Throw in with the vegan design and textures to give it this insecty, dragon-like look. And it is a formidable suit. I love like a lot of its armaments and weapons. The bits that come out from that shield is kind of terrifying because it's not like your traditional funnel of bits where it's a mechanized piece that moves around by mind control. No, these are energy particles that are controlled by your mind. I think that's far more scary and more dangerous than funnels and bits, because those funnels and bits can be destroyed, but those energy particles can be constantly generated until you run out of energy. Super crazy cool, super formidable, kind of scary too. But I love the overall design of this suit too. Also, the fun fact about it too is that the eyes, it has the vegan eyes where it's like this weird like little VW kind of thing, but it can open up and have the Gundam eyes itself too. So I'm like, the best of both worlds. Best of both worlds. The highest technology vegan technology can offer alongside with the AGE system. Come on. It's a shame that this suit got really, really wrecked by between Zihard and Simu's fight. By the way, that's a very disappointing fight. Oh, I forgot to tell you. So these next three suits are my absolute favorite. These are the suits I'm so enamored with in this series. I love it. And they all are very similar, and you're going to see what I'm talking about. And you can already see first here with the Bakdo. The Bakdo, it looks kind of hokey here. It looks cooler in motion and in action in the series. Again, right with that dragon look, insect inspiration design-esque. It transforms into a dragon. How cool is that? I love it. Oh my god. Its dragon form's actually cooler than this picture here. I wish I could find a better looking picture, but it's got like these weird like facial features, like almost like a, not like kind of like a mole, but like a beard. And it has like the ears, like you can kind of see it, not by a whole lot. It's hard to see in this picture, but it's such a cool looking suit. I really, really love it. The next one that takes over from this one here, because well, this one can transform and it's like, it's not as great looking. This one just takes it all in. The Danazine. It's funny, I call it by these names, but we don't actually know the names of these suits at all. We don't hear them really called out in the series. We just know them. It's a vegan mobile suit. It's a UE mobile suit, but that's about it. I love this design. This one is it's really hokey because it doesn't really transform exactly. It kind of transforms, but when it's not in flight mode, it looks like this, like a dragon. So cool. It's dragon, but jagged looking, and it's got like a lot of these insect-like features. It's little beam saber. Can I show the beam saber? It doesn't have it. Beam saber comes out from here. It's like, it's kind of funny when it slashes it and cuts down mobile suits or the Genoases and stuff like that. I just love it. Also, it's really hokey where it has a beam particle cannon right here in its junk area. So when it flies, it fires it from that spot. Or when it stands, it's like, and fires. I thought that's just so cheesy and funny, but I really love it. Like, this whole design's so cool. But my number one favorite Gundam or suit from Gundam AGE is the one, the only, the first suit you ever see in this entire series, and I never heard of its name before. Gafran. I really, really, really love the Gafran. Not so much for its humanoid form, but for the dragon form. This one is so cool. It's so many. Let me put it in the purple because I like it, like the purple colors, and in the dragon form, it's just so menacing and cool looking when you're first introduced to them. And it's like, it's so alien, so different, and the way it attacks. Now, like with the vegan suits, a lot of them have the like a beam spray in their hands, like a Gatling gun almost, and it can also turn into a beam saber. I thought that's cool. I don't care too much for having 6 fingers or whatnot, but I just like that. It's like, it's super like versatile. Its tail can be used as a cannon or a beam cannon. It transforms. That's another cool thing too. I wish I could show this, but when it flies, it kind of has like this hovering effect, like this hovering hue effect. The purple ones have these like really nice purple ones that go with it. So like the first episode, they look really cool flying. We do get some barrel rolls from these guys too. So when they do like a barrel roll, it's really cool. I just can't stop saying it's cool, but I really love the Gafran. Haters gonna hate, and they might not like a lot of the designs because it's so alien different. I think this is so welcoming, so warm to the Gundam franchise. I really love it. And it's not these hokey, stupid looking weird things. It actually looks legit cool. Love it. But that's what I gotta say about my favorite suits of the Gundam AGE series. But let me just get back to grounding ourselves just a little bit here. So let me just go ahead and notify our viewers who don't wanting spoilers at all. All right, folks, I hope you guys all came back here. So no more spoilers here. Done with all of that. But I want to jump into my next segment here. And that is, of course, I'm new to the Gundam franchise. Should I start off with Gundam AGE first? This one is a little bit of a hard one here too, because it's a little bit contradictory with certain aspects of Gundam itself. And I'll give you my explanation here. My answer is yes. You can start off with Gundam AGE. I think it's a fine series to start off with. Reason I say this is that it's entry level. It's self-contained story. You don't need to be worried about sequels or anything like that. You can just jump into there and just enjoy the series as it is. It does have elements of the Gundam franchise, or core elements of the Gundam franchise, that are throughout the entire series. My only issue, though, is that the precedents or expectations that it sets for a Gundam series going forward, because this is a very different story where it takes place in 3 different generations, it's not the same like any other Gundam series. So that's where I get a little bit iffy about that one. It might not set the right expectations, but it's still an overall good series that maintains 2 of the 3 things I'm more concerned about when I want to introduce someone who's new to the Gundam franchise. To me, I think that definitely gets a pass, and AGE is easily an easy jump into Gundam series. That being said, as for an overall, while it is not by far the best and well-received Gundam series in the entire Gundam franchise, AGE has a lot of heart and a lot of fun with the franchise itself. Spanning over 3 different generations in this respective arcs that give a whole lot of variety of different anime themes and undertones, while still paying respect and honoring the core elements of the Gundam franchise. Now, there are some missteps in the third to final arc, and you could say the final arc itself too, but this doesn't destroy the overall story of the series, alongside with the action that keeps you entertained throughout. Again, I say this, haters are gonna hate, but Gundam AGE is a timeless good fun and a great entry point for the Gundam franchise, in my opinion. That said, Mobile Suit Gundam AGE gets a timeless 4 out of 5. But wait, folks, don't leave just yet. There's more. Because not only am I going to cover AGE, but I'm also going to cover, the Memory of Eden story or movie. So I'm just going to quickly glance over the story here because it's something we kind of talked about a little bit too. But Mobile Suit Gundam AGE Memory of Eden is let's just start off with the story, right? So basically this story takes place of the 2nd generation, or covering Asimu's story arc. We follow Asimu, Z-Heart, and Romary as their friendship builds and then becomes conflicted when the war between the Vegan and Earth come into play. This is a two-part, 1 hour and 18-minute compilation movie set that was made a year after the completion of Gundam AGE. Now, notice that I say it's an hour and 18 minutes. This is one of the most shortest, if not shortest one for compilation movies in the Gundam franchise. Most of them clock around about 2 hours. Some of them come in at an hour and 30 minutes, but this is coming in at an hour and 18 minutes each. 2 episodes, or 2 movies. Now, like most compilation movies, these two, again, are shorter than average compared to your average compilation movie. It cuts out whole episodes, multiple story arcs or subplots, and a lot of characters. In fact, these 2 movies... Oh, be right back. Wait there. I'm gonna try and cut this out so that way future live streams you don't have to, cycle through this or whatnot. How to help the wife? She just came home, and yeah, like I said, I should have filmed this or streamed this 2 hours ago, so I didn't come into these situations. But things kept on getting delayed for me. Anyways, I'm gonna come back to here. So what I was talking about with Gundam AGE Memory of Eden here. They cut out the episode, yeah, just like most compilation movies, they cut out a lot of things, such as like a lot of episodes, either reduce or wholesale cut them, alongside with a lot of characters or character development too. The movies are mostly focused only on and solely on Zimu and Z-Heart, with Romary being a support character in here. Now, this is where I'm going to say, like, there's a lot of things I want to save again for the, what's the Gundam difference between Memory of Eden and AGE itself. But those are some pretty most common compilation things that we're aware about. However, I'm going to share with you guys some newer things here, and I'm not going to do like a side-by-side comparison. But what I want to tell you is this. I think I'm going to go ahead. Yeah, there's not a lot of spoilers here, so let me just go ahead and talk a little bit more about this then. So, like I mentioned before, the compilation movies focus more on these 2 characters. A little bit more so with this, like the first movie follows with Asimu more, and they still build off on these 2, but it follows Asimu more, and then the second movie follows more of Z-Heart. This is where I'm going to say this is a very interesting set of compilation movies, because I'm actually very impressed with these movies. The first one, I can't even honestly want to call it a compilation movie. The first movie is almost like 80% new footage and 20% footage from the series. You heard that right. 80% new footage. In fact, much of the first movie of Memory of Eden is a retelling of the events that took place, or at least the first part of the second generation, or Asimu's story. A lot of it is retold, redone, newer dialogue, a lot of newer scenes to really emphasize and build up the friendship between Asimu, Z-Heart, and Romary. So a lot of it is just brand new. And in fact, surprisingly enough, in an hour and 18 minutes, the movie does a fantastic job, and it does a much more well-paced, well-done manner of telling a much more concise story, and actually the buildup of their friendship than the series ever did. The series, again, does deal with a lot of other characters, a lot of little subplots, and a lot of things that happen here and there that does really interject and interrupt a lot of the friendship building between these 2. But the movie takes a lot of that out. Like, for example, we do see Flint, but he's only like a couple of scenes. We see some other characters, but not really the focus. Everything has been cut and, like, reduced the fat to a fine point where all that's left is the meat. That's between our 2 characters and Romary being the third. It's actually fantastic. It was such a surprise of the first movie. I was just surprised. It's not in a way that any compilation movie has ever been, where, you know, most compilation movies, they cut the scenes and it feels very hacky slashy, choppy, very, very jagged and clunky. This movie was very smooth. It was as if I was watching an anime movie, and it just happened to have Gundams and mobile suits in it. The development between the characters were so smooth, and I'm like, it was a shame to me, and it made me think back to like Mobile Suit Zeta Gundam New Translation, where if we really want to retell a story, this is what I expect. This sets a fantastic expectation of what you want to do when you want to retell a story. Not just hack and slash and take segments from the series, but retool the series in a way to reformulate and create a brand new story. Memory Eden's first movie does exactly that. And I would almost say it's almost perfect. It outshines a lot of other compilation movies, like, wholeheartedly. It almost beats out the original Gundam, like the original Gundam trilogy, in my mind. One thing that does set it apart, though, is towards the last 20 minutes of the movie, it becomes more closer to, like, you know, the compilation stuff that we see, taking a lot of bits and pieces from Simu's arc here from the series, and not so much as newer footage or anything like that. Just more or less honed down to the more important fights and more poignant towards their friendship and all that jazz. So that was pretty much it. But the first movie was an absolute surprise to me. The second movie, though, is where I'm like, as much as I praise the first movie, the second movie is where we go downhill from that point. The second movie is more traditional and in line with a compilation movie, where it is hacky slashy, very choppy, very clunky in terms of what it is, because it uses far more footage, far more things from the series itself. It's a reverse. Instead of 80% new footage and 20% stock, or like footage from the series, we now have the traditional, what seems to be 80% from the series and then 20% new footage. Now, the newer footage that they do use in the movie is actually really nice, because a lot of the newer footage is a retelling or retooling of what Z-Heart was going through. A lot of it's more of his mentality, or what he's thinking about, and images of the dead, basically. This really builds more of his character, and it gives him a little bit more of clairvoyance about why and what he's doing at the end of the third, or in this case, the fourth arc in the series. Oh, no worries. I'm gonna pause right here for right now. You need help, hon? Okay. No, I just want to offer you help. No worries. Ooh. I should pull this out for you guys. What happened? You? Oh yeah. Do you want me to hold that for you first? Sure. When I tell you guys that my area sucks, So again, I'm in the walkway area and all that jazz. It's kind of hard to make this place look pretty. People who give me junk about my background and, well, no, I have a green screen. Like, I do have a green screen. Why don't you put it up? I don't have walkway space. There's a lot of stuff behind me already, and it's already bad enough. Oh no! All right, so let me try and refresh from the earlier part too. I think I'm gonna start all the way back from the top with the second movie here. But we're almost done here, folks. Appreciate the patience. So, as much praise as I give to the first movie, the second movie is where we kind of go downhill from here. It really much more resembles closer to an actual compilation movie of previous Gundam movies to begin with. So much of it, like how the first movie was 80% new footage, 20% is stock footage or footage from the TV series. The second movie is now 80% footage from the TV series and 20% new footage. The newer footage, though, does add quite a bit and gives a lot more explanation behind Z-Heart's character and a little bit more explanation of why and what he's doing from the third and fourth arc. You see, because as I mentioned earlier on, most of the complaints about the series is mostly around about with Z-Heart's character by third and fourth arc, and how it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So in the movie here, it gives a lot more scenes where it's depicting a lot of his inner turmoil, his mentality state, and even seeing the dead too, and how it impacts Z-Heart's decisions, alongside with him still wanting to do what Ezelkant's true motives are for Project Eden. Although it still seems a little bit backwards of a character, at least it has a little bit more of an explanation, and it has a little bit more heart to it. It's not a fully developed explanation, I still feel, but you know what? It was much better than Z-Heart's just, okay, that's your motive? Alright, let me go ahead and do that, like he did in the series. Here, there's more inner turmoil and more conflict within himself to accept Ezelkant's true motives for Project Eden. There's all, so let me see here. So that's what I want to say real fast about the movies itself. I do have some spoiler portions here. Not that much though, but might want to skip ahead to the if I recommend this movie or not for new viewer. All right, so for spoilers for Memory of Eden here, I like how they like. So I want to dive a little bit more into Z-Heart's explanation or reasoning behind going along with Ezelkant's true motives. He knows that Ezelkant's true motives is not pure, not good enough, and it's a distaste towards the theme of memory in these movies. And the way that he tries to justify is basically like, those that have already died, I don't want their deaths to be in vain. And we've all been fighting for this for so long, I'm still gonna fight for this. If not for Ezelkant's true motives, I'm gonna fight for our original, it's basically fighting for our original goal, which is to come back to Earth and make it our home again. That's basically it. Whereas Ezelkant's motives was basically, oh, I'm just trying to handpick the most superior X-rounders, basically, and then make them the survivors, and everyone else can just go off and die, quite literally. So that's pretty much it with his reasoning. I like, though, that they give a lot more explanation and a little bit more dive into his inner turmoil, where he's conflicted because of the people who have died, and they're looking down at him and upset with him being flippy floppy, like not adhering to the true to the goals of what the vegan mission is. And then when realizing what Ezelkant's is, hearing back from the dead, it's kind of like this nice like little thing, but with his inner turmoil and rationalizing his actions. One other thing I really did like too, there was an alternative take, an alternative scene with him and Fram. So there was an alternative scene where he tells her about how he feels about her, and it's not really truly feels about her, but like how he views her. And it's much better. It's a much better and respectful scene than it was in the series, where the series, he tells her like, I value you as a subordinate. Whereas in this one here, he tells her like how he values her and doesn't quite tell what he wants to tell, but you can get the idea. And that gives Fram so much more emphasis into her character. Like, it's not so much her like blindly following him anymore. It's like, I know he loves me, but he can't say that. And he's trying to be strong. And this is the idea, this is the kind of man that I wanted to follow, that my brother sacrificed his life for, you know, like that felt more in tune with Fram from the beginning of the third arc when she was introduced, versus like how she was in the series, where he tells me I'm his subordinate, this is the best I'll get, I guess I also go kill myself. That's not the case here for Fram. And they also give an additional scene for her too, which I felt was touching and sad. They still kept Fram's death the same way. One major difference though is that when they had that kind of like ghost new type-esque interaction, Fram and Z-Heart share a passionate kiss. So I thought that was like very, very touching because we didn't get that in the series. We know that Fram loves him, but we didn't really know how Z-Heart truly felt. Kind of got an idea, but it was very, very hard to tell. And we get that more so in the movies. And I feel like it's more of a character completion for Fram and also for Z-Heart. So I really like that little additional thing there and the little before additional scene, that an alternative take to how Z-Heart had his final conversation with Fram. So liked a lot of that put in together there. Last thing too was the fight between Asimu and Z-Heart, the final fight. A lot of it. So the series was a huge letdown. The fight ended off so quickly, so fast, despite that Z-Heart had the most highest tech Gundam besides Gundam FX, right? And he's fighting against Asimu in a outdated, outclassed Darkhound Gundam, or Age 2 Darkhound Gundam. He was thrashed because he was just all conflicted and all that stuff. Here, Z-Heart is still conflicted, but he's more resolved in his manner. He's more resolved to complete the mission and get Vagan onto Earth. And Asimu is just more determined to stop, Asimu is more determined to stop Z-Heart. The fight in this scene is probably one of the most savage and brutal fights. Albeit it's about 2 to 3, maybe 4 minutes long, right? But it's absolutely brutal, absolutely savage. It's just one of the most enjoyable fights and so redemptive from the series. It's like one of my top tier fights I enjoyed watching. We really see the utilization of the Gundam Legolas versus Darkhound, the absolute desperate struggle Asimu's trying to go against Z-Heart, and just the fighting was just intense. It does still end off in a similar way. Yes, Z-Heart still dies, but we also get an additional scene where Z-Heart has one more heart-to-heart conversation with Asimu. And I feel like this conversation was the most poignant because we did get something similar to it, but it wasn't that strong, that huge of an emphasis. But this newer scene, this retelling of that particular part really hits home and then really concludes perfectly right there. I know some people might not be happy with the ending because, like, oh, when Z-Heart dies, we ended off right there. But the whole movie, these two movies were about like this not Top Gun-esque friendship, but this friendship between the two, this Point Break kind of a situation. And they have one more heart-to-heart conversation, and Z-Heart, in his heart, knew he did everything wrong. And his only regret was that he did not hold on to the memories of being human and cherishing the memories that he had with Asimu and Romary, that he couldn't stop what they were already set forth as the Vagan mission, you know, like, and try to change things or turn things around. And if anything else, he went out in a loving and caring way from his friend, and knowing that no matter what, even after all the things that had transpired between the two of them, Asimu still had that love and tender care for him as a friend. And that allowed him to go a little bit more peacefully. Like, you know what? I gave it my all. I did my best. Even though Asimu, who, you know, bested me, like, should have done better. But you know what? This, you know, like, the fight itself is going to die with me. And I think it's like he just took all the responsibility that Ezelcan just dropped onto him, and then all the aspirations and all the dead who fought up to this point, you know, all that went with him. And he went out with that love of a friend, you know, and it just hits on all those pinnacles, on those like really finer points. I think it was really, really touching and a really nice piece to add to finish it off. And the movie does end not abruptly. I think it ends right there because, you know what? The second movie was Z-Heart's story. And with his death, it's very much so like any movie that has your main character dying in it. It should be stopping right there because that's it. One last thing I really do like is that we do get an epilogue, but I think this epilogue is more of a companion piece towards the series overall. We see the tombstones of Dean and Lou, who were the kids and teenager that Kyo meets in the third when he goes to to Mars, basically, or the I forgot the vegan planet thing was called. So we got that there. It doesn't make sense because they were completely cut. Most of Kyo's stuff, everything about Kyo and whatnot was cut out. So it doesn't make sense that those two, the tombstone for them was there. But we also have a tombstone about for Z-Heart and Fram. My only issue, okay, hear me out. My only issue with that was that how does anyone know that Z-Heart and Fram had some level or a desirable relationship with each other? You know, that was the only thing that was never explained. Other than that, I felt that was a very nice and beautiful little epilogue kind of end. Yes, they say like, oh, the Vegans and the Earth signed a treaty together and they won't fight anymore. But I think it was a nice thing to see those tombstones right there. I say it's a complimentary to the series because when Z-Heart dies, screw him, he's gone, basically, right? When Dean and Lou died, we know that Dean was trying to take Lou's ashes with him to Earth and all that stuff like that. So it was nice to finally see, like, if you can add that epilogue to the end of Age, we got a little bit of a happier ending, even though they are dead, but a little bit of a happier ending and a more of a resolve for Dean and Lou finally going on to Earth. Same thing for Z-Heart and Fram. So I thought that was a really nice little thing to add on towards Age's ending. Again, more of a side thing and a complimentary thing to go along with Age's overall ending. That said, I do want to talk really briefly, super briefly, about the suits of this movie. Now, if you're not familiar with my thing, and I already did it earlier, but you know, there's newer suits that get introduced, new suits, designs, redesigns with movies and series. Memory of Eden is a little bit different here because it's just a compilation. However, what makes this compilation different than anything else is that they added in a couple of things that weren't in the series itself, particularly one set of a Gundam and then a different recoloring. So first and foremost, I want to talk about is the Age 1 Sordia. Apparently, this is a suit that was only in a game specific, and then when they were making this movie, they included this suit. Now, what you can't see on this suit, though, was really cool, is the sword and shield. Its appearance is really cool because when it appears, Asimu throws down the shield to land into the ground to protect Romary from getting attacked by a Bakto, I think that's what it was, or was it a Gafran? I can't remember. One of those two suits. And then he comes in with his sword and just absolutely slices and dices things. It was a very cool scene, but the suit overall has that like knight look. It looks like a knight. It has a sword and shield look. It's really cool. It's something I would actually want to get a model of. It's a shame that we don't have a better picture of it. I don't have anything. Maybe in the future I'll get some screenshots, but I really like that. The other one, and something I already talked about in the series, but it was a little bit different, is the Gundam Legolas. We get its recoloring. This is not a good version because this is just something, you know, repainted over from this picture right here, but it's in Z-Heart's colors. It's actually a little bit more of a deeper red, if I remember correctly, but the Gundam Legolas is more or less painted in Z-Heart's colors, and we get to see it in its full ferocity, especially during the fight with the Simu. We get to see this thing go balls to the walls all out, and that's something we did not really get to see in the series. We got to see it in like a few fights, but this one, if not for just a few fights here and there in the series, the fight between him and the Simu was super redemptive, and I mean, it just really stood out about how awesome this suit really was. So that's all I gotta say regarding the suit overall here. So let me just go ahead and remove that spoiler banner here, and we can just move along. So hope you folks come back here from the spoiler section and stop by here. We're almost done, so I appreciate you guys sticking around. But let's go ahead and continue with our next little segment here. I'm new to the Gundam franchise. Should I watch this movie first, or compilation movies first? This one's a little bit harder, but I'm probably gonna say no. Do not start with Memory Eden as your first Gundam movie or foray into the Gundam franchise. For this, I say is this. It basically the second arc, although it is a retelling of the second arc or the second generation, it's a lot more finer told. It cuts out a lot of other things that I find is a lot more enjoyable, or what made Age really, really enjoyable. Additionally, a lot of it might not make sense. And I'm seeing this again because I had watched the series and then I watched the movies right after. If you had just watched the movies themselves, it might not make a lot of sense about what's going on event-wise, because it's so heavily focused on the character building for these two that it really neglects everything else around the world. This is almost reminiscing to the Gundam Seed Special Edition movies. The only major difference, this is far, far superior than those three movies could ever be. But other than that, it is not an easy get into. Again, this is the second arc or second generation. It doesn't really hold up a lot of the core themes of the Gundam franchise. In fact, it instills its own themes and coverings, like talking about memories, the importance of that, what it is to be human, those sort of things. The third and final one here is that it does not set good expectations for other Gundam series or Gundam movies if you're trying to get into that. Like compilation movies, it sets a bad expectation for that because most compilation movies are cobbled up messes at times. Sometimes they really work out. This is a really good example that works out, but not good for the other ones. And for series-wise, this really cuts out a lot of things that makes the series great. Only just to focus on a couple of characters. So it doesn't set a really good expectation going into the Gundam franchise going forward. Other than that, as an overall though, Age's Memory of Eden compilation movies are a welcoming and pleasant surprise for compilation movies in the entire Gundam franchise. It sets a brand new expectation and standard how a compilation movie should be. In fact, or in this case, a retelling in a sense. The first movie, again, is literally a retelling with an 80% new footage, 20% footage from the entire series, where they retool a lot of scenes, a lot of dialogue, to really become a huge focus on our primary characters of Asimo Zeeheart and then support character of Romery. I really do wish a lot of compilation movies, or in certain cases with retellings, to be just like this. This is almost, I want to say, a first in the entire Gundam franchise. However, unfortunately, with the first movie, the second movie doesn't follow the same footsteps. The second movie follows more closely to a lot of compilation movies we've seen in the Gundam franchise, and does closely with the 80% stock or footage from the series, 20% newer footage. But at least with the second movie, it does a lot of justice to characters such as Zeeheart and Fram, and giving them, especially with Zeeheart, more explanation about why he's doing things that his character shouldn't be doing, rather than just saying whatever and doing it like he does in the series. So the movies give a lot more explanation and a lot more dive into these characters, and really forges the friendship between Asimo and Zeeheart. While I can't out-recommend these two movies unless you have watched Age, I do have to say they are an absolute fantastic companion pieces to Age, and if you do watch Age, definitely you want to watch these two movies. They are something I would recommend and definitely not to miss. That said, Mobile Suit Gundam AGE Memory of Eden gets a 4 out of 5. I do have to say Memory Eden is a absolute delight of a compilation movie. Like I said, I really wish more compilation movies in the Gundam franchise are exactly like Memory of Eden. I would almost say I wish a lot of them were like the first movie, because I would love to see a retelling, retooling, and fixing things up. I could totally see that with the original Gundam, making it more of a heavier focus on Amuro, or the rivalry between Amuro and Char and stuff like that. Or maybe like Zeta Gundam, make it more of a better focus on Camille, or a better understanding of what's going on in the world in Zeta Gundam. Fortunately, we don't really get a whole lot of that in like with a lot of compilation movies, but I think Memory of Eden sets a really good example and precedence that should be followed going forward. But that's all I had to say about Gundam AGE and Memory of Eden overall. If you haven't already, if you're watching this on Twitch, make sure to follow me on my Twitch account here. If you are watching this on YouTube, like the video, subscribe to my channel, leave a comment down below. I want to hear from you guys. Did you like my opinions about AGE? Did you not like my opinions? Did you watch AGE? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Do you think it's absolute garbage and you still think it's like ZZ Gundam? Or what about Memory of Eden? Have you seen it before, and do you agree with what I have to say about that? I want to hear from you guys. Leave a comment down below. Aside from all of that, I do want to thank you guys for sticking around and watching this review. And until the next nerdy reviews, I'll see you next time. Take care. Alright folks, and that's actually legit. I am going to be ending the stream from here at this point here too. So I do appreciate you guys sticking around for about 3 hours and 45 minutes at this point. 4 hours, 46 minutes to be more precise. But just want to recap here. So yes, we got our doubles down. I wish I showed a little bit more of the casings. That's okay. Not too bad. I have started up on Iron-Blooded Orphans. That will be the next one I will be reviewing. That won't be reviewed this coming up weekend though. That's why I'm doubling up, because I'm going to be doing work stuff this coming up Saturday. So, fortunately, I'm not going to be able to do that. Otherwise, expect to see another live stream review 2 weeks from now. And covering Iron-Blooded Orphan, we got that. And then, of course, after that will be the Build Fighters series. And hopefully after that, I only got one more thing left, which is going to be Evolution. Yes, Gundam Evolve. I apologize. But that is all I have here today for you guys. I'm like looking around, making sure I'm not forgetting anything. For those of you who are curious, I am still going to be trying to do my podcasting stuff. Ooh, excuse me. Actually, I might want to do a little teaser thing. I don't know. I'm going to try and figure that out too. But I need to do a little bit of a teaser stuff for podcasting. I have a lot of content planned out for when I complete the series. I'm just trying to get to the finish line right now, finish and watch all the Gundam series so I can finally talk about all of them again. But this time in a little bit more finesse, a little bit more detail. Of course, like I said, these live stream reviews are for me to start doing stuff, to actually start talking about it, and really compiling my notes and getting things down. So look forward for newer content that's coming out after I finish the series. That's not going to be coming up until maybe the end of this month of September, or yeah, end of September, early October, or mid-October at best. Again, I do want to thank you guys for watching. Please like, subscribe, follow, all that good stuff here. And until 2 weeks from now, the following Saturday, you'll have a great rest of your weekend, the following week, the following weekend, the following week, and I will see you next time. Take care.